Good afternoon, friends. Myself, CA Raj Chawla, welcome you all in this today webinar on CARO 2020. Today we have with us very eminent faculty, CA, CS, CMA, Ashish Gupta ji, a very senior chartered accountant with us. And also we have with us Honorable Shri Vijay Kapoor ji, ex-director Board of Study and enriched with the experience and knowledge of the auditing. Also, we have with us CA Divakar Jindal ji, my associate, to help me out to organize this program, and CA Keshav Agarwal ji, my technical support. Thank you all. I welcome you all. And if you have any query, please post your query in the chat box. So I request Shri Vijay Kapoor ji to please start the deliberation.
Thank you, Raji. I must express my thanks to you once again. And my participants may laugh at us. I will again say it is only through persuasion of Raji that I am here. In fact, the speaker for today's session is C. Ashish Gupta. He is a very, very experienced chartered accountant and happens to be a very old friend. I'm sure that with his professional experience, perhaps he is the most appropriate person who can guide the members in this direction. Thank you, Divakar, being with us. And of course, I will say that our participants are really incredible. Their hunger for knowledge is really immense. I pay my respect to all the participants for joining with us on this particular seminar. Now, friends, as you are aware, I think today is the most important topic and very close to my heart, a part of the auditor's report. That is Company's Auditor's Report Order 2020. Of course, I think Ashish ji would also clarify that due to COVID 2019, it has been postponed by a year. So it shall be applicable from after 2021 accounts. Having said that, I think the point which I wish to convey and put it in a very subtle manner is that CARO is a part of the audit report. In fact, as a chartered accountant and particularly as a practitioner, one has to understand very clearly that whatever work is done by the practicing chartered accountant, whatever efforts he has put in, whether in doing the audit he has put 1 hour or he has put 100,000 hours, his entire effort, whatever work and with his team, whether the team comprises of one person or whether the team comprises of 500 persons, the entire effort and the entire time taken, everything has to be reflected in the audit report. Let's be very clear that there is no place other than the audit report where auditor can put all his findings at one place. We have seen the evolution of audit report in our country. In fact, one of the main purpose that why I wanted to touch upon the today's session was that before 1975, there was an audit report which was only governed by Section 227, subsection 2 and subsection 3, and by the Companies Act 1956. But however, there has been evolution in the reporting duties of the auditor. Subsection 1A and subsection 4 was added in the Companies Act 1956 to introduce the exceptional reporting as well as provision to introduce any special order. Under subsection 227, under section 2271A, 6 matters were put in and auditors were required to make a report only if they were not satisfied. Today, that 2271A is merged into section 143, subsection 1. I call it as an exceptional reporting because you are not required to report if you are satisfied about the matter. Why I am making this point? According to me, when I talk of the evolution of audit report, according to me, there is an evolution of the duties of the auditor. An auditor is expected to do the audit of financial statement and express his opinion thereon. But over a period, what we have seen that the duties of auditors have been undergoing a changes. In fact, we can expect that as an auditor, one may try to satisfy are the rising expectations of the society. Now, this evolving role has moved away from the audit of financial statements to the proprietary audit, some other kind of an audit. In fact, in 1965, when 2271A was brought in, there was an item that if the company has granted any secured loans or advances, whether the terms and conditions on which they have been granted are not prejudicial to the interests of the company or its members. Let's remember very clearly, as an auditor, I am not expected to look into how the company is doing its business, what kind of decisions it is going to make. It is the part of the business company management to take the decisions. But since some company managements were manipulative, some promoters were manipulative, so they expected the auditor to find out this. Now, for an instance, even as back as in 1965, when this clause had come in, that means auditor will go to the market, find out that what is the normal rate of interest, whether the rate of interest normal rate is a 9% or 10%, whether the company is giving 8% or 7% or 6%. If it is so, it's a very difficult situation. But we have seen that over a period there has been uh, increase in the duties of the auditor. So in 1975, an order was introduced, Manufacturing and Other Companies Auditor Report Order 1975. And CARO 2020, or maybe now it will call as CARO 2021, is a refined version, because after 75 order, 1988 order was issued. After 1988, there was 2003 order was issued revised, then 2016, and now 2020, and of course implementable from 2021. Now, coming to 75 order, in fact, 75 order was introduced. In fact, people who are of our age would remember that that was introduced during the emergency period. And normally we used to call it as a social audit order. In fact, there were very interesting clauses in this. For instance, the initial clause was whether the physical assets have been fixed assets have been physically verified or not, or whether inventories have been physically verified or not. I used to laugh at it that if I'm an auditor, if I'm doing the audit of a company, I'm expected to do the physical verification, look at the valuation as a part of my normal duties. That means the government is expecting me to reiterate in writing even what I'm expected to do as a normal auditor's job. So to me, it all looked like to be very funny. In 1975, there was also one more clause, very interestingly, whether the company has paid any provident fund, ESI, or undisputed statutory dues. I thought that the company is not able to, or the say our registrar of companies, our regulatory authorities are unable to catch the companies. So they have put an onus, a responsibility on the part of an auditor. Baba, you tell us, so we will go and find out the company. So today, when I look at Ashish ji, I think you will deliberate at length on this order. Today, when I look at the clauses, I am wondering that if in 1965 certain clauses were introduced, there were certain clauses which were there in 1975. That means, as per the auditor's report, there should not have been any violation on any part of the company. All those cases must have been booked by the register of companies. But unfortunately, I think it's a matter of fact, and I'm going on record. I can take on any regulator. According to me, none of the regulators have never cared to read the auditor's report. Auditors may be giving report year after year after year. So if there are 10 lakh companies, it may be applicable to say 9 lakh companies. The auditor's report is hardly read. Only thing is that in case of certain cases, they may try to reach at the auditor's report. So my first point is that the auditor's report has evolved over a year. Now, if before even 2020, in fact, in 1975, the size of the audit report will run into maximum 2 printed pages. When the MAU was introduced, the size may run into 4 pages. Now, today, with the CARO 2020, according to me, the size of the audit report may run into 15 pages or 20 pages. I do not know the kind of pro forma or the formats which have to be given in CARO 2020. So one has to really see that whether the audit, and if I look at the now audit report, see, throughout the world, when we look at the audit report, in fact, audit report is being made more comprehensive. Even today, I find so many paragraphs in the audit report. What is the opinion? What is the basis for opinion? Critical audit matters, auditor's responsibility paragraph, management responsibility paragraph, other matters paragraph. So many paragraphs are there in the audit report itself. And I'm sure that 90% of the things which actually were brought in CARO, they were part of the normal audit practices followed by the auditors. But the second aspect which we see, that an auditor is no more a financial auditor. He went on to become a proprietary auditor, so that to find out whether the companies are doing their business in a proper manner or not. But going further, in fact, the role, whatever has been changing and evolving over a period of time, I do not know where it will end. In fact, I have been asking many of my friends that if it is happening like this, where will we stop? And now, if you look at some of the clauses about loans and advances grantees, loans and advances taken, or the say working capital credit limits, which you will be all discussing. Ashiji, I think it will be we shall be all grateful to you if you could expand, because in this today's scenario, there will be so much of pressure on the auditor to collect all the information, to put it in a proper perspective as a part of the report. In fact, according to me, there is so much of duplication of things in the audit report, because critical audit matters. See, at the global level, when they say you want to highlight the auditor's work, you want to know how the auditor is working, they brought in the critical auditor, the key audit matters, 701 standards, where you can highlight that these are these very significant matters which he discussed with management and he's satisfied. Now, here I think they are going much, much more beyond. So, according to me, it involves a lot of serious issues. I am sure that I think you are dealing with a very important topic, and members shall be highly benefited by this, by looking closely at how actually these clauses have to be implemented and executed. Thank you, Ashishji. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to welcome CMA Rakesh Singh ji, our former president of Cost Accountant Institute. वेलकम सर। सिंह साहब, राकेश सिंह सर, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है सर, अनम्यूट कीजिए प्लीज।
म्यूट किया हुआ है सिंह साहब का, म्यूट हुआ है।
म्यूट आवाज सर, ये म्यूट कीजिए, अनम्यूट कीजिए सर। सर आपका अनम्यूट कीजिए, आपने म्यूट किया हुआ है अपने माइक को, अपने माइक को।
ऑडियो लिखा आ रहा होगा कहीं पे, वहां पे टच कर दीजिए सर एक बार।
नहीं पता लग रहा है,
कोई नहीं, एक मिनट, वो थोड़ा अनम्यूट कीजिए सर। हाँ, यस सर। सर वेलकम सर, वेलकम सिंह सर।
थैंक यू वेरी मच।
I will request you to please say a few words about our topic today, CARO 2020.
Yeah, thank you, Raj. Actually, first, my apologies, because I was trying to get in this room through my mobile. I could not get it, so I have to come to this laptop. And anyway, I think what my previous speaker was saying, let me sum it up. What I can understand with the new notification of this CARO 2020 is they are basing on certain principles. I fully appreciate and agree that our audit reports or any audit report has evolved over a number of years, and more or less we have been expressing our opinion, and also we could understand the language in which it is being given. But I think 3-4 principles basically we have to look at the overall framework. The first is basically it is driven through NAFRA. I think the basic thing is that NAFRA has driven this all CARO 2020 report. And basically 5 principles, 4 or 5 principles, I will look at it based upon which the whole thing has come. The first is basically disclosure. Disclosure, what they have done is they have tried to increase the number of disclosures and the depth of disclosures, including, let us say, the first itself. In the assets, I have to include intangible assets and also on many of the things on inventories and all those things. The second is propriety. I fully agree that propriety aspect was already there, and the opinions expressed definitely. They were the guiding principles. But what now they are trying to do is that they are making it little bit more on as an onus on the auditors that look, if anything goes out, you cannot take an offhand approach and say that I'm only reporting it. So you have to get little bit more involved and apply your mind, and they want an affirmative reporting. The third one basically which is coming is even some places, even you have to have a analysis of the management functioning and management insight. Let us say, for example, what we have been doing is that we used to talk about only the loans obtained by the company and the terms and conditions. But now we are basically also going to look into the investment part. Now, investment decisions is basically management decisions. But now auditors also have to look at the investment decision. This means that I have to also understand the management perspective and get into that and take an independent view of my some of the decisions. So this is the third aspect. Fourth is, of course, all of us know that even our audit reports used to say, and whatever the basic accounting principle was, going concern. But now it is being deliberately brought in, and specifically we have to put in that we are looking at a going concern, taking into account all the other aspects including accounting part of it. It means that responsibility is now much greater on the auditor, where he is again going to give an assurance to every stakeholder that whatever I am doing, it is a going concern for the next 1 year. In any case, going concern, we always take a view of a year or whatever limited period our reporting framework is. But last and final thing which I understand is that the whole scheme where the whole CARO 2020 has been, it's basically increase in number of disclosures, merger of many of the things, but ultimately coming to serve the basic part to for the purpose of NAFRA, which I think is looking to find an excuse if anything goes wrong. Because as an auditor, whatever I have learned as an accounting professional is that, okay, I have to give an independent opinion on the operations of the company and my observations, not beyond that. But today you are asking me to get involved into the some of the things like 10% of variation in the quantitative details, even in the stocks. That's going too deep into it. I think it's going to be a tough job for auditors. And I don't know, actually, to be very frank, I agree with my previous colleague who was deliberating. I don't know where it is going. I think it's going to be a very tough call for any auditor to take on. I've got my initial observations of this. And frankly speaking, as an auditor, I'm little afraid of this 2020 CARO than happy about it. Thank you. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your this. Now I request C. Ashish Gupta ji to please start his formal deliberation.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Raj Chawla. Thank you, Vijay Kapoorji. Thank you, Rakesh Singh ji, an old friend, for giving your inputs and explaining in details. And I am also of the same view that this is going to be this CARO 2020 is having more stringent and putting in more responsibility and giving higher risk upon the auditors. So with this, I will, give you clause by clause of CARO 2020, and wherever required comparative with earlier micro and CARO 2016. And at the end, I will give you the implications of CARO 2020 on our fraternity, CA fraternity, on corporates and other professionals. So let's start with CARO 2020. Friends, basically this CARO is in, they have enhanced our, area of coverage for the same item, reporting and disclosure on financial stability, utilization of funds. The stress is on basically all these items: financial stability, utilization of funds, and disclosures of aspects and compliance of statutory items on. So to start with, in general, this is not a in fact, this CARO 2020 is not an amendment. This is a replacement of CARO 2016, or we can say this is a total revampment of CARO 2016 actually. This is, this CARO is very old. We have been, as explained by Mr. Kapoor, this is very old. 1975. We have been continuing with CARO kind of thing. Earlier, it used to be name nomenclature at micro manufacturing and other countries auditors report order, which came, with lot of amendments in 1988, and since then we'll start that. So you see this in 1920, in 1988, it was having around 20 classes. Then later on, the clauses reduced to 16. Then later on, the clauses were added to 20. Now this CARO 2020 is having 21 clauses actually. You see, as there is no change in applicability of CARO, this CARO is applicable on all companies, including a private company, which is a subsidiary or holding company of a public company. This is applicable on foreign companies, except there are a few exceptions on which the CARO is not applicable. Those are banking companies, insurance companies, because they have their own separate set of financial reporting system. Then this is not applicable on one-person company. You know, the gentleman, one-person company is a company where the shareholder cannot be more than one person. The share capital of the one-person company is should not be more than 50 lakhs. The turnover of the one-person company should not be 2 crore rupees. Again, this is also not applicable on small companies. Small companies were defined and brought in initially in Companies Act 2013, wherein it says that small companies are the companies which have again the share capital of less than 50 lakhs, as well as their average turnover of last 3 years is not more than 2 crore rupees. So this is also not applicable on private companies, but this is applicable on private companies if they fulfill any of the 3 clauses, like they have their net worth, means their share capital as well as their free reserves. Those reserves may be revaluation reserves, maybe capital reserves. All those reserves, including the value, should not be more than 1 crore. Then it is exempted. Otherwise, it is applicable. This CARO is applicable upon them. The other private company, if it has borrowed any time during the year above 1 crore from financial institution or a bank, either in the form of working capital or term loan, or though NFB limit, non-funding limits are not being taken, but non-funding limits are being considered if the non-funded limits have been crystallized, means you have utilized those limits and bank has paid through funded limits. Then next to this is not applicable if the turnover of a company, of a private company, is less than 10 crores. Not turnover, say revenue. Total revenue of a private company is less than 10 crore rupees. Then this is not applicable. Otherwise, this is applicable. So now, friends, we'll move on the clauses, one by one clauses. The first clause is pertaining to fixed assets, which is continuing since the inception of the CARO, which is fixed assets. Now they have, changed this name to PPE, property, plant and equipment. This is nothing, the same fixed assets. The nomenclature has been changed because the nomenclature of fixed assets has been changed in accounting standard 10 with PPE. That is why this change has come into. Otherwise, in our accounting, in guidance note of the institute, a little bit more items have been added in PPE. Now, intangible assets. Intangible assets, they have added for the first time in this CARO 2020. Now you have to audit all the intangible assets. You have to see whether the intangible assets are in existence. Whether you have to physically verify them. You have to see the title of the intangible assets also. You see, this clause pertain to that. This clause put a responsibility on auditor to see whether the management has complied with the method of the accounting of have adequate accounting principles, as well as they have physically verified the fixed assets, and if there is any deviation, they have accounted for that deviation. Friends, earlier there was a, the auditors has their own prudence. They were supposed to have their own prudence, utilize their own prudence to reporting on that. There was concept of materiality. They were to follow the materiality concept for reporting. Now they have given this as a 10% clause, that if there is a deviation or there is a variation from physical as well as accounts, books of accounts in physical for fixed assets, then if it is more than 10%, the auditor has to report upon that. Similarly, the auditor has to see if there is a revaluation of assets, the assets have been revalued by a registered value. And if there is again, there is a variation from the physical, from the books of accounts, then about 10%, that has to be reported herein. This time, gentlemen, they have brought in Benami properties, Benami transaction items, which an auditor has to foresee, auditor has to report upon. That he has to see whether the Benami Transaction Act has been initiated against the company, or it is in existence already upon the upon a corporate for which you are going to do an audit. Similarly, the title deeds concept was introduced in CARO 2016. Now they have enlarged the coverage of that area. That now they have specified a table, a detail of table, that if there is if the title deeds are not in the name of the company, but fixed assets are in the name of the company, in the books of the company, then auditor is supposed to comment upon that. Auditor is supposed to comment upon that, title deeds are not in the name of the company. He has to specify in the table whether the title deeds, since how long the title deeds are not in the name of the company, and are they in the name of the employee of the company or director or promoter of the company, and reasons therefore he has to specify in the table. So next therein is inventory clause. Again, this is also continuing since old micro 1975. This entails that auditor has to comment upon whether the management of the company has properly accounted for all the inventory, whether they have physically verified all the inventory, whether there is an adequate and proper accounting system as well as physical verification system by the management, wherein they have been physically verify the inventory of the corporate. So again, the materiality concept was already there. Now they have given a clause of 10%, that if there is a variation in 10%, by more than 10% in physical from the books of accounts, then auditor has to comment upon that. Gentlemen, this time they have added a clause of WC limits, kind of reporting upon WC limits. If a company has borrowed more than 5 crore rupees in the form of WC limits, working capital limits, and they are submitting their reports, every company is supposed to submit monthly or at least quarterly the statements of their current assets, statements of their debtors, statements of their inventories. Now they have put in the burden upon auditor to verify whether those statements are matching with the books of accounts or not. This is again a tedious task, a cumbersome task again, and this is a big dent upon almost all the companies as well, because but this will certainly give a comfort to the bankers. So herein, gentlemen, you have to verify, you have to go to the bank, obtain all the copies of statements submitted by the company from them, and match as on 30th June, as on 30th September, as on 31st December, as on 31st March, whether all these are matching at that point of time with the books of accounts or not. If not, then he has to comment upon that. Further, there is a loophole in this. If it is only if the underlying, if the WC limit, underlying of the WC limits is current assets. If the WC limits are taken, say without any underlying or any other underlying which is not from the company, then this clause can be foregone by an auditor. He can, he can say this is not applicable upon a company. Gentlemen, they have added the the loans loans advances given by a company. They have enlarged tremendously the scope of that clause number 3, wherein they have added investments. Earlier investments means investments made by a company in the listed or unlisted shares of any other company, shares of its subsidiary companies, or somehow any other associates or joint ventures, etc. Now, auditor has to verify all the investments, whether those investments are, whether the terms and conditions of all those investments are favorable to the company. Those should not be detrimental or prejudicial to the interests of the company. You see, earlier impairment testing was to be done, used to be done, or there is a clause that every auditor is supposed to do impairment testing and report in through notes of accounts. Now they have brought in the ambit of CARO, that every auditor has to report whether investments give a true value or not. If there is an impairment, whether the company has booked that impairment in the books of accounts or not. In its financial statements, they have reflected it or not. Similarly, this clause is again pertaining to that loans given by a company or advances given by a company or securities or guarantees provided by a company. You see, this clause was earlier till CARO 2016 was applicable if it is given to a related parties under section 189. But now this has been made applicable for all parties, any party. And one has to see whether all the terms and conditions of loans given or security or advances given, etc., have been properly had the adequacy of terms and conditions, have disclosure of all the terms and conditions, and all terms and conditions are not detrimental to the interests of the company. He has to see whether the company is giving loan and they are taking borrowings from outsiders also, whether they have given loans to interest-free loan, etc. He has to comment upon that. There is a separate disclosure for related party. Every time you give to loan to a related party, you have to make a separate disclosure in the form of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the details of the related parties you have to be. Otherwise, to others you can give in the form of a figure only. You see, earlier earlier we used to give the maximum amount outstanding for loans or advances given during the year, but now that has been abandoned and dispensed with. Now you have to give whether the aggregate of the total loans outstanding as well as percentage of total outstanding of loans and advances given by a company. You see, there are generally sometimes the companies do arrangements in the manner, if a person is not has not given a loan back to them, the company gives them a loan and they repay that the same amount as for against the earlier loan given to them. So this is totally not acceptable. This kind of arrangement is not acceptable. The auditor has to comment upon that and has to give a proper disclosure of this, that the company has done this kind of arrangement. If there is any delay or default in principal as well as interest, the interest clause has been added this time in CARO 2020. If there is a delay in interest or principal by more than 90 days, then all the details have to be given in the CARO report. You have to give in the form of aggregate of the loans as well as percentage of all the loans, including the squared up loans. If the squared up loans during the year, those are also to be commented upon. Similarly, if a company has given a demand loan to a person, demand loans are where the end date, repayment date is not specified at the time of giving the loan. Those are demand loans. The demand loans, if a company has given a demand loan to any person, those are to be specified in terms of aggregate of the loan and percentage of the loan. And if it is to the promoters or directors or related party, then you have to dovetail item-wise details in your CARO report. Gentlemen, we will move forward to clause number 4, which is compliances under section 185, 186. The companies has to make, sometime company has to make loans, etc., or has to take loans, etc., or for the subsidiaries or holding companies, etc. That time, the company has to comply with section 185, 186. This clause is not a new one. This was there introduced in CARO 2016. And herein you have to comply with the requirements of obtaining approvals from audit committee or board of directors of the company. The auditor has to comment whether the compliances of section 185, 186 have been done by the company or not. The next clause is clause related to deposits. The deposits, in deposits, the auditor has to see whether they have complied with section 73 to 76 of the Companies Act, whether they have complied with the requirements and regulations of RBI Act, whether they have complied with the any order or any comments given by any NCLT, tribunal, court, etc., they have complied with or not. You see, this time they have added a new clause of to be verified by auditors, which is deemed deposits. Deemed deposits are the deposits. Those are actually deposits, but wherein the company has made some default in compliance of their regulations deemed of deposits. Those become deemed deposits, and the company has to repay that. Till the time the repayment has not been done back, those are being termed as deemed deposits. Though this term is nowhere defined in the Companies Act, this is defined in the guidance note of our institute. So deemed, the auditor has to see whether the company has properly complied with the deemed deposits of the company or not. He has to comment upon them. Then next to it is cost records. Cost records, there is nothing new. It is continuing since 1988. The auditor has to verify whether the company is maintaining cost records. If the company has been is required to do that under a central government order under section 148 of the Companies Act. If any, the central government has specified a lot of industries, as well as they can do any to a specific company also to maintain and get the audited done for cost records. But here the auditing is not to be concerned by the statutory auditor in this CARO report. He has to see whether the company has complied with the requirement of maintaining cost records or not. If the company is maintaining properly the cost records and completeness, then he has to comment that the company is doing that. Otherwise, he has to report accordingly. The next to this is statutory dues. Friends, this is again the old clause. If a company has undisputed statutory dues defined here are ESI, PF, income tax, VAT, service tax, etc. This is continuing since old days, and this clause. So, if there are undisputed statutory dues which company has not paid for more than 6 months, those are to be reported here in detail. But this time they have added the list for GST also, because GST was just introduced in 2017 after CARO 2016. So they have added this GST also. So again, and the next to this is that you are also to obtain the list of disputed statutory dues which the company has not paid, and then you have to verify all disputed statutory dues, and you have to give details whether why those have not been paid by the company. The next to this is unreconciled income or surrendered income under Income Tax Act. Friends, this is a new clause this time in CARO 2020. Herein, you have to go through the order under section 143(3) or under section 148 or wherever. You have to go through whether there is a clause, there is an income which the company was supposed to be booked in its books of accounts. For example, the sales. If the sales have been inflated in the order of income tax order, then the company is supposed to book in the books of accounts. The auditor has to verify whether all those incomes have been properly accounted for in the books of accounts or not by the company. So this is again a tremendous task. Also, because there are, as we know, there are so many additions in income tax orders. So auditor should be vigilant and auditor should be prudent enough to see which is required to be booked in the books of accounts or not, because not all additions are required to be added in the books of accounts. Only a few items are to be added which generate income or expense. Then those are to be booked in the books of accounts. Basically, this is this they have brought in because they were also going to bring in this Vaad se Vivad scheme. So probably because of that, they have brought in this clause in the CARO 2020. Next to this is again repayment or borrowings, uses of the borrowings by a corporate. You see, the corporates do borrow from banks, financial institutions. Till 2016, it was only financial institutions, banks, or debentures. But now they have added it to any person. If a company borrows from any person, then this clause is invoked. An auditor has to comment upon that. What this says, earlier this was only principal was to be considered. Now they have added interest also. That if there is a default in principal or interest, the auditor has to comment upon that. Auditor has to see whether the funds obtained by the company, funds obtained borrowed by the company have been properly used. Means the long-term funds have been used for long-term purposes. The short-term funds has been used for short-term purposes, and those are not being used vice versa. If the long-term funds have been used for short-term purposes or vice versa, then auditor has to comment upon that, and he has to extract the amount also. He has to report with the amount, how much amount has been borrowed for long-term purposes and utilized for short-term purposes or vice versa. He is also to comment upon the loans taken, if loans taken for related party purposes. If a company has borrowed loans and those have been utilized or invested in a subsidiary company or joint venture or an associate company, then the auditor has to report herein. Means if the company has borrowed funds and utilized for other purpose, for the purposes of its related party, then you have to report properly with the amount. Similarly, if there is any loan taken by a company on the pledge of securities of its subsidiaries or related parties, those are also to be reported by the auditor of the company. Gentlemen, this time they have shouldered the responsibility of auditor with one more clause, that he has to report whether the auditee company is a willful defaulter or not. Again, this is a tedious task. I'll explain you while in my implications clauses. I'll explain you therein, but you have to verify whether the company is not a willful defaulter. If it is so, you have to comment upon, you have to give the information that company is a willful defaulter. You know, willful defaulters are the defaulters which are the persons who have capacity to pay as per RBI definitions. The person who has capacity to pay, but he is not intending to pay. He is declining to pay. Then the person is declared as willful defaulter by RBI. Reporting of IPO, FPO, price-based placement, or preferential allotment, optionally convertible debentures, etc., etc. This clause was introduced in CARO 2016, wherein you were to supposed to do verification for IPO, FPO, whether the company has brought in any IPO, or FPO means follow-on public offer, whether the company has brought in forward public offer or follow-on public offer, we call it FPO, whether the company has come out and raised funds through IPO or FPO during the year. Then you have to see whether the company is compliant, has complied with all the regulations and requirements under the Companies Act, under the SEBI, under the RBI, if applicable, and any other applicability. So auditor has to verify thoroughly the compliances of IPO, FPO under Section 42 of the Companies Act. Now they have introduced this applicability of Section 62, which requires the raising of funds through private placement, through preferential allotment, or through optionally convertible debentures. The auditor has to verify all the compliances of Companies Act, SEBI, again RBI, etc., for these for raising through funds during the year for these through these the specified sources. Gentlemen, they had introduced this clause in CARO 2016. Now this is clause number 11. The frauds on or upon the company, by or upon the company. If there is a fraud fraud has been committed by a company, by your auditee, or upon your auditee, then you are supposed to comment upon that. Earlier, there was only officers and employees of the companies which were, if the fraud has been committed or committed by the officers or employees of the company, then the auditor was supposed to report. But now they have included any person. They have changed to that, to any person, amended with this any person, that if fraud is committed by any person upon the company, or company has committed fraud on any person, then the auditor is supposed to report on that. But those frauds should be the knowledgeable frauds in the company. The fraud which is detected by the auditor only, he has to discuss with the auditor. He has to discuss with the corporate. The corporate is supposed to discuss in their board meeting, in board report, and then auditor has to specify in this CARO report. Also, auditor is supposed to inform to the central government through ADT 4 form number. The form has been defined as ADT 4, char number 4. So under that, auditor has to inform to the all details of the fraud to the central government. This time they have added this, they enlarged the scope of this clause number 11, whereby the whistleblower concept is already, the mechanism is already implemented in the listed companies, and to a few large big companies also. So auditor has to see whether there has been any complaints during the year from whistleblowers, and whether the company has been properly dealt with the complaints or not. And he has also to see whether he has to assess whether the complaints were the severity of the complaint, materiality of the complaints. If the complaint is severe or having impact upon the business of the company, on the financials of the company, then he has to bring it, he has to disclose that in this audit report, otherwise not. But he has to assess, he has to obtain information from the company, and he has to see whether the mechanism of receiving and disposing of the whistleblower complaints are adequate and proper in the company. Next to this is Nidhi companies. Gentlemen, Nidhi companies are the companies, this is just like NBFC's companies, but Nidhi companies with the difference that they can lend or give advance to its members only. There are hardly 250 companies in India which are Nidhi companies. If you are doing audit of Nidhi company, then you have to see whether the company is complying with the requirement of 1:20 ratio of net worth for the deposits of the company, whether the 10% of the deposits have been kept in the unencumbered securities. Though, this is nowhere defined, but we have already read somewhere in section 11(5), within brackets 5 of the Income Tax Act, which are applicable on trust. So the company has to invest, he has to keep deposits in the same manner only. Also, the company has to see, auditor has to see whether the loans given by the Nidhi company and advances given by the Nidhi company are having proper terms and conditions or not. He has to see if there is a default in default, if there is a default in repayment, repayment of receiving back of loans and advances or interest thereof. Then that is also to be reported by an auditor in this CARO report. Next clause is pertaining to related party transactions. Gentlemen, this clause was already there since long. A company has to report in its financial statements as per schedules of the schedules whereby we have to, as per Companies Act, that all the sales purchases, agency commissions, leasing transactions, if anything has been done with the related parties, that is also to be given in detail in the notes to accounts by each and every company without an exception. So here, wherever the CARO is applicable, you have to verify whether the company has complied with section 177 and 188 of the Companies Act or not. So you see, the details of related party transactions are also being governed by Accounting Standard 18 and Ind AS 24. He has to see whether the company has, obtained for related party transaction, whether the company has obtained approval or confirmations from ACB, audit committee and board of the company, and all those transactions are at arm length. And you see, he has also to verify whether the proper documentations of all the transactions have been done by the company or not. He has to see, normally company give loan to its related party or take loan from its related party, then interests are being foregone. So he has to see that interest should not be foregone. The documentation is proper and genuine, basically. Next to this is internal audit mechanism, internal audit system. Every company, this clause was there in Micro 1988. Later on, it was being dispensed with. Now they have brought in again this clause number 14 as internal audit system. The auditor has to verify whether the company has in existence, in practice, has implemented an internal audit system as per the nature, size, and business of the company. He has to comment upon that. He has to see whether the company is complying with the internal audit guidelines, internal audit standards or not. He has to see whether the coverage of the internal audit is complete and adequate or not. You see, internal audit is now is not a small item, is not a small coverage area. It encompasses labor laws audit, environmental law audit, proprietary audit, management audit, and all kinds of audits are covered in internal audit, and auditor has to comment upon that. Minded that audit like tax audit or say GST audits, etc., kind of things which are being required as per separate act, those are not covered here. So only internal audit items are to be covered here, and he has to see whether those control mechanisms of internal audit and adequate and proper system is implemented by the company or not. Also, he has to see whether the points raised by internal auditor has been properly dealt by the company in its financial statements as well as books of accounts or not. If required to be dealt in the books of accounts, whether those have been dealt. If not dealt, then he has to report. If those have been dealt, then he has to report that the company has properly dealt with the books of the report of the internal auditors. Next to this is non-cash transactions, under barter system kind of things. Lot of companies obtain properties or fixed assets or any other assets of the related parties on lease, etc. Uh, those are being termed as non-cash transactions. So auditor has to verify whether all those non-cash transactions have been properly and adequately complied with, their requirements have been complied with, their requirements under section defined in under section 192 of the Companies Act have been properly defined with by the company or not. In section 192, every company has to do all these transactions after obtaining the approvals from the shareholders of the company in general meeting. So auditor has to see whether the proper general meetings have been convened and their approval has been obtained properly. Next to this is the RBI Act for NBFCs and CICs. You see, a lot of companies do work of NBFCs, etc., without having registration from RBI under section 45 1A of the RBI Act. So auditor has to verify and see if the company is doing such kind of activities like an NBFC. Then he has to report whether the registration from RBI as an NBFC has been taken or not. He has also to see whether the company is complying. In case of you are doing audit of NBFC, then he has to see whether all the compliances of RBI and statutory regulations have been complied with by the company or not. Similarly, CIC, gentlemen, CIC is a company which lends, which invests, which give advances to its group companies, which should not be less than 90%. Then it will be termed as an CIC company. So CIC is a company which gives advances, which lends to its companies, which invests to its group companies by more than 90% of its net worth. So, and out of those 90%, the 60% should be equity, should be invested in equity only. So if any company, if you have any company in your group as a CIC and you have taken and that company has invested in your company or has given loan to you, to the auditee, then you have to specify, you have to see whether all the compliances have been done. Besides it, you have to see whether that CIC is registered with the RBI or not, because such kind of CIC are to be registered with the RBI. Also, you have to specify how many CICs are there in your group companies. Just the number has to be given in CARO report. Cash losses. Clause number 17, cash losses. Gentlemen, cash losses earlier in MICOR 1988, the company was supposed to give information to the BIFER if more than 50% of the net worth is eroded. They have diluted this to some extent in this cash. Instead of net worth of the company affecting any fund flow losses, instead of eroding the net worth, they are only considering the cash losses. Cash losses are the one you can calculate from the cash flow of the company by taking into consideration of operating activities, investing activities, and financing activities. Or you can also compute that figure by adding net profit to the non-cash items like depreciation and amortization, etc. Then you will have cash profits of the company. If that figure is negative, then you have to report with the figure how much is the amount which is having cash losses during the year. You have to consider only during the year cash losses of the company, and you have to report here in your CARO report. Gentlemen, they have added one more clause of auditor resignation in this CARO 2020, that if an auditor has resigned during the year, in between the year, due to any reasons, then the incoming auditor has to verify whether the company has redressed their objections, their issues, their concerns, whether the company has complied with the objections and concerns of outgoing auditor, and if the outgoing auditor, the concerns or their objections were so material, those are also to be reported here. If, and in particular, if the company has not resolved those queries, the company has not resolved those objections. This has come, you see, but you say by SEBI has already defined that outgoing auditor should not give nowadays. The auditor should not give simple resignation. He has to specify the reasons for its resignation. He cannot say that he has resigned ambiguous reasons, such as other preoccupations or healthy reasons or personal or administrative reasons, etc. He cannot mention in its resignation. He has to give proper details of his reasons of his resignation if any auditor resigns during the year. For listed companies, this is applicable for listed companies and for the companies which are governed by RBI Act. You also have to give the similar information. You have to comment upon similar information if you are doing audit of a subsidiary of the company where the auditor has resigned. If you're doing audit of subsidiary company and the objection was material there too, then that is also to be reported here. Reporting on financial status, gentlemen. This clause, they have enlarged the scope to a great extent. Earlier, you were to comment only that the material, there is no material uncertainty of the company for its meeting its liabilities, for meeting its dues for the next 1 year from the date of audit report. But now they have added that you have to go through all the you have to assess the viability, you have to assess the financial status, you have to assess the financial capability of the company, and you have to see, you have to make out, you have to calculate a few ratios, the solvency ratios, you have to calculate a few financial ratios, you have to see the expected date of realizations of the current assets of the company or debtors of the company, and you have to match with the expected date of payables of the companies. Then you have to see whether the company will be able to capable to pay its next 1 year liabilities or not, and that 1 year has to be calculated from the date of signing of the report. So you have to obtain funds flow statements for next 1 year or more than 1 year. You have to obtain projections, you have to obtain cash flows from the company, and you have to assess yourself simply taking taking from the management or taking from the company that wherein they have shown their solvency will not be sufficient. You have to put in your mind and see whether those statements are correct or not, and whether the company will be meet out its projections, whatever they are giving or not. For example, if the company says present turnover of the company is, for example, 100 crores, and if they say they'll achieve the turnover of 300 crores in next 1 year, then you have to see whether that turnover is achievable or not, whether they have sufficient debtors, they have committed debtors or not with them. Then only you can, you have to assess properly, thoroughly, adequately, and with due diligence that the company will be able to meet its material liabilities for next 1 year, and there is no material uncertainty for the company. Means the company, we used to do going concern concept, which is an old and basic concept of a company, that going concern concept has to verify whether the company will be able to sustain in future or not. So this clause relates that also, that the auditor has to see whether the company will be able to continue in futures or not, whether the company has sufficient projected cash flows to meet out its projected liabilities. He has to see the management plans, And if there is anything, anything non-viable, he has to report in its CARO report. CSR funds. You see, this is an old clause. Every company which is falling under section 130, under section 138, probably 135 of the Companies Act, has to invest or has to incur 2% of their preceding 3 years, average of 3 years, towards CSR funds. Corporate social responsibility. Social CSR means corporate social responsibility. They have to incur CSR funds for social purposes. The auditor has to see and verify whether the company has incurred those funds within the financial year. If those have not been incurred within the financial year, then within 6 months of the financial year, those are to be transferred to a special account, in a special account with a bank, and to be incurred from there on, from that account. And if the company has not incurred even up to next 3 years from that special account also, then those funds are to be transferred to central government as per schedule, as per the methodologies given in Schedule 7 of the CSR Act. Schedule 7 entails Prime Minister Relief Fund and a few other funds wherein the company has to transfer those CSR funds. Gentlemen, this clause number 21, which is the last one, properly indicates that this CARO 2020 is not applicable on consolidated financial statements, CFS statements of a corporate. Only to the extent this has to be reported by consolidated in the consolidated financial statements. If a particular company has auditor of a particular company has qualified its report, then that qualification has to be brought in the CFS. Otherwise, auditor is not supposed to comment upon CFS as per CARO report. Earlier, there was a clause of managerial remuneration, whether the company has properly computed the managerial remunerations or not. This was already there in the notes to accounts in the schedule, whereby the company is required to comply with. That is why they have dispensed with here, and they have deleted that clause from here. So gentlemen, this is the end of the CARO 2020. Now I will explain you why, in my opinion, this CARO 2020 is having stringent provisions, having drastic provisions, having putting in more and more risk upon an auditor, more and more responsibilities upon the auditors. I'm going to explain you for a few items here. Like willful defaulter. Willful defaulters are, a list of willful defaulter is given by the RBI. And they are also to, RBI is to report to the CIBIL, and CIBIL make it to the public. Earlier, when RBI was hesitant to make it public, then Supreme Court intervened, the Honorable Supreme Court intervened, and then after that only RBI issued the list of this defaulting companies, willful defaulting companies. So obtaining this information is a very difficult task for an auditor. You have to surf various sites. You have to keep on surfing various sites of SEBI. You have to keep on surfing sites of RBI. You have to keep on sites of CIBIL, etc. Even then, you won't be able to obtain that information. So this is again a tremendous task given to the auditors, wherein you may have high risk if you do not disclose, and the company was a willful defaulter. The other source of information would be the management representation. You can obtain from the management that the company has not been defaulted as yet, a willful defaulter. This Benami Transaction Act, the tax, this Benami Transaction Act itself is a very big, wide and vast act. The company, the auditor cannot know from any other source if a company is already listed in Benami Transactions Act or any inquiry is initiated again under this act upon a company. So only source is you have to obtain information from the management of the company. You can obtain management representation that those they are not falling under the ambit of Benami Transaction Act. Again, income tax assessments. I told you earlier that the income tax order entails a lot of additions. So you have to use your prudent mind that which one is required to be reflected in the books of accounts and financial statements of the company, which again is a very tedious task. Minded, this is applicable only for income tax additions only. If there is additions in any other act, then that is not to be reported in CARO. Team deposits, I explained you earlier. There are so many compliances of deposits and deemed deposits, and if there is a non-compliance, the auditor has to specify there herein. He has to be thorough for all the Companies Act. He has to be thorough with all the RBI Act. He has to be thorough with all SEBI regulations in this regard. So this enlarges the scope and working of the auditors. Loans and advances given by the companies. There are, for example, there are 10,000 employees, there are 10,000 workers, 5,000 workers in a corporate, and they have taken loan from the company, they have taken advances from the company. Auditor has to verify each and every advance given to every person, any person, whether the terms and conditions are proper and the company is not losing any money out of any loan given to these persons or any other person. So this has to be thoroughly verified, and this requires again this again enlarges the scope of the auditors. This enlarges the responsibilities of the auditor. Whistleblower genuineness, as I already explained you, the whistleblowers, you have to assess whether the complaint raised by whistleblower is proper or not, whether the board has considered that or not, whether board has taken that into the considered that in the financial statements or books of accounts if required or not. He has to assess whether the complaint was genuine or not, whether the complaint was material or not. If it was material and the company has not resolved it properly, then that has to be brought in the CARO report. Also, he has to verify whether the this whistleblower mechanism is existing in the company or not, which itself is a very tedious task. These small companies, mediocre companies, they do not have any requirement of maintaining any mechanism of whistleblower complaints, whereas that is required in RBI companies, RBI controlled company, RBI, companies which upon which RBI Act is applicable, or companies upon which SEBI Act is applicable. Not other companies are required to be have this mechanism. So he has also to see whether the company is having proper mechanism or not. He has to comment upon that. He has to see whether compliances of section 42, 62 or IPO, FPO, private placement, and debentures, optionally convertible debentures, all compliances have been complied with or not. He has to see intangible assets. Nowadays, every company is having intangible assets. Whether there are a lot of softwares, a lot of licenses are there. Normally, in a normal company, also licenses and softwares are there. So, auditor has to see whether the company is maintaining the register, the fixed assets register of intangibles also or not, whether the company is verifying with the physical records or not, whether those are existing, the titles of those intangibles are in the name of the company or not. Accordingly, he has to report that. He, for that he has to, my purpose is telling us that the enlargement of scope has been done because of this CARO Act, CARO provisions of CARO 2020. So you have to for for avoiding or compliance of that, there are so many authorities which can challenge you at any point of time, like SFIO, like MCA, like ICAI, ICSI were already there. They were NIFRA. They have they have new NIFRA, National for Financial Reporting Authority, has been constituted on 1st October 2018 only. That is the for control and mechanism of auditing profession. Independent. This is an independent regulator for auditing profession. There are MCA. There are courts, income tax, direct indirect authorities were already there. So many authorities, and the chartered accountants and their perception in the government, in the eyes of the government, they are always a soft target. So you have to have uh, a proper records. You have to have a proper documentation. You have to have a proper working papers for your audit, and you have to maintain that for a longer period. Section 140 within brackets 5 of the Companies Act gives a power to NCLT that they can debar any auditor for 5 years for taking any for having taking any appointment in any company. So there are stringent provisions now, stringent penalties, stringent regulations, and this CARO has widened the scope. So we are into the higher risk now. Gentlemen, in my view, I don't take it this as a simple audit nowadays. This has become a forensic audit now. Earlier, we used to study also that auditor is not a bloodhound, auditor is a watchdog only. Whereas now it has become a vice versa. Auditor, by this CARO 2020, we are going to become a bloodhound also. So you have to maintain your standard operating procedures, auditing working papers, etc., etc. So you should be very vigilant. You should be very prudent and intelligent enough to have this while reporting in CARO 2020. Now this will have an impact. This will have an impact on as I explained it. They have enhanced auditor responsibility. They have given higher risk to the auditors. On the one hand, on the other hand, the government has increased their reliance upon chartered accountant, which is a good step. Also, we can take it positively in this manner that they are relying more and more on chartered accountants. Now, with this, the scope of working of CFOs, corporates has enlarged a lot. The CFOs are to provide you information as an auditor. He has to provide you information in timely manner. He has to provide you all the information. He has to provide information besides you to all the stakeholders, to the government authorities also. So because of this, their responsibilities has also been increased. Now, with this clause that whereby you have to verify on quarterly basis all the statements submitted to the banks and the financial institutions, that though you are also to comment upon them. That also increase the reliance of banks and financial institutions on auditors. Besides it, uh, this going concern concept, the clause 19, wherein you have to report upon viability and material uncertainty of the companies. In this COVID-19 situation, we all know what will be the impact of COVID-19 on the economy of the company, on the companies as well as. So you should be very, very particular this time for considering this COVID-19, whether the company is viable and capable to maintain and pay meet out its liabilities for next 1 year. So this time, because of this COVID-19, you have to be very cautious on this aspect. This CARO 2020, which was to be implemented for financial year 19-20 only, because we could not work for these 2 months around because of this COVID-19, and in future also we are not aware. This has been postponed for the applicability for the year starting from 1/4/2020, means financial year 2021. So Gentlemen, I also want to say that you have to prepare it, your audit plan. You have to prepare your audit plan properly from now onwards, so that the 30th June submissions or 30th September submissions to the banks, you can verify uh, now only about the companies. You have to plan your audit work, you have to plan your time management, and not but the least, you have to plan, you have to give your fees and quotations accordingly, because the role of chartered accountants, the responsibility has been enhanced tremendously, as we have discussed. So with this, I complete my deliberations. I am open to question answer session, and with this, I hand over to Chawla ji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for a nice deliberation. And let's start our question answer first. Then we will take the final comment from our respected Shri Vijay Kapoor ji.
सर फर्स्ट क्वेरी अभिषेक जी की है, इफ anyone clause fulfilled then CARO applicable on private companies?
No, as I explained you earlier, if any one clause fulfilled, then yeah, out of any three, if any one clause is applied, if say that the paid up this net worth of the company is above 1 crore, or they have borrowed any time during the year, whether at the end of the year at 31st March, the borrowings were less than 1 crore, but during the year the borrowings were more than 1 crore, then it is also applicable. If the net revenue, the revenue of the company was about 10 crores, then this is also applicable. If any one of the three is met, then this is applicable on private companies also.
Sir, next Kulwinder Dubas ji ki query है, Institute should now consider adding one more paper in syllabus, that is Bhavishya Drishti, to enable auditors to predict the future of auditing company for at least 1 more year.
Correct, you have rightly observed it. But there are methods where we you can obtain information from the management. Though one more thing I left in between, that nowadays so many promulgations, so many ratios have come from the various tribunals, from the courts, that management representation is not sufficient. You cannot rely upon management representation only. Earlier, what we used to do in past times, we obtained written written management representation, and we used to say that this we could not verify, and management has commented in this manner, in that manner. Now that will not be applicable. You have to put in your mind, you have to put in your intelligence, you have to put in your prudence, and that will be an additional support for you. That will not be a substitute for your audit. So but for this purpose, for future 1 year, you have to obtain their future projections. On that you can rely upon, but you have, as I explained you have to use your mind, and you have to assess whether the projections are achievable, feasible or not. You should not take it blindfoldedly. Yeah.
For this query, I will request Shri Vijay Kapoor ji, because he has a rich experience in our institute also, and he knows this subject. So your comment, please, sir. आवाज नहीं आ रही सर आपकी. ठीक है डन सर.
So according to me, in fact, as far as going concern aspect is concerned, this is a normal duty of the auditor as per the auditing standards. So my friend, you need not worry. The actually point is that since some of the auditors maybe were not testing the going concern assumption, now it has been put specifically in the CARO 2020 itself, and where they have stated that you must look at some financial ratio, you calculate age of the financial debtors. But normally, friends, it can be done. It is not that difficult a task. So what we are telling, what we are expecting, that after from the balance sheet date, even our SA 570 also tells this, that within 1 year, the company will be able to maintain or say pay out its all liabilities. It's a thing which can be done. It's not that difficult, but I think many auditors were defaulting on this. So that is why they have put this clause specifically. Otherwise, it is a normal standard. See, my fight with the regulators is that my auditor friends are expected to follow the auditing standards. And what they do in the auditing standards is also now they are being asked to write in the CARO itself. Anji, please go ahead.
थैंक यू सर.
Sir, next.
कपूर साहब अपनी स्क्रीन को थोड़ा सेट कर लीजिए, आपका थोड़ा चेहरा, सुंदर चेहरा.
Sir, चले आगे सर.
हाँ सर.
Sir, this is very possible that the books, the property is not in the name, title deeds are not in the name of the company, but those are in the books of the company. This is very much possible because the company has paid from its bank account. It comes in the books of accounts of the company. Whether the title is still pending to be obtained, whether the title is in the name of the director, promoter, or employee of the company. So many times the company transfers their own, the directors or promoters or employee transfer its own property in the name of the company. They take money or they do all funding requirements, but the title deeds are not being transferred. So this clause was specifically inserted in CARO 2016 because of this, that the title deeds should be in the name of the companies. You will find this kind of problem in every company actually. There are certain items that you will find in your audit. There would be certain items which are not in the name of the company, but those would be in the books of the companies.
Sir, next query Jininder ji ke, from which financial year CARO 2020 is applicable?
As explained, this is applicable for the year starting from 1/4/2020. Means we are talking in the year which is applicable. So the 2020 financial year reporting would be done under this CARO 2020 format.
Thank you.
Sir, next query Parveen Shani ji ki hai. Do auditor has to check the property purchased during the year or the older one also?
No, during the year. During the year, the property which has been brought in the books of accounts during the year, those are to be checked. The title deeds of those are to be checked.
Sir, Ritu Khandewal ji ki query hai. Applicability of CARO on private company, all conditions must be fulfilled or any one of them?
As I explained earlier in the first question, any one of them is fulfilled, then CARO will become applicable.
Sir, Antima ji ki query hai. Cost records exemption, please inform.
Again, cost records exemption, please inform. The cost records, section 148 entails that the central government, the central government has specified on which companies the auditor maintenance of cost records is apply or not. If it is applicable, then the company has to maintain. If it is applicable upon a company, then auditor has to specify whether the company is maintaining the records properly or not. This is a requirement as an auditor. So you have to go through all the circulars of the company of the government, central government. This is under the purview of central government. The central government issues circulars and that sees that this is applicable on the particular company or particular industry. If your company falls in, your auditee falls in that industry, then the company has to maintain the records and auditor has to comment accordingly.
On this query, I will request, please wait. On this query, I will request Shri Rakesh Singh ji, our former president, Cost Accountant Institute. This is cost-related query. So your comment, please.
Whatever Ashish has said is absolutely correct, and there is nothing to add on that. I think he has interpreted it correctly.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, next query Parveen ji ki hai. Order under section 143 subclause 3 are older than the year for which we are doing audit. So we need to report older income sales which was not reported.
You see, you have to see, for this purpose, you have to see the orders, not only 143.3 or any other order under section 148, 153 or any 158, any other order, whereby the penalties or, income tax assessment orders, basically they say, or the surrendered value in the You have to see during the year only. If there is any order during the year, those are to be, considered for this purpose. So for that purpose, again, you will not be able to know other until unless you obtain information from the management. You take management representation whether they have provided you with all the orders or not.
सर नेक्स्ट क्वेरी भारत मित्तल जी की है. ऑडिटर shall now demand right to attend all meetings of board of directors and shall charge the clients to attend such meetings.
You see, in few board meetings like annual board meetings, auditor is always a invitee there too. But for other board meetings, we will take up the matter, your suggestion to the central government. Actually, if you will start like doing like this, you will attend all the meetings and all that. Then you will not be able to handle more than one audit. You will be keep on busy in the one audit itself, because already they have enlarged so much of scope, and you yourself want to enlarge your scope of your working. So you should take care of that.
So Kapoor sir, your comment?
No, I think it is not required. I think auditors should only do to that an extent to which it is possible. I think it is quite unreasonable kind of a situation, where, and in fact, why auditors should go and run sit into the meeting where so many other things are being discussed. No. I think this is a dangerous move. In fact, no auditor should attend the board meetings.
Sir, next query Anuj Jindal ji ki hai. Kindly explain the deemed deposit clause again.
See, deemed deposits, there is no concept of deemed deposit actually in Companies Act. There are deposits. The company has to comply with certain requirements of deposits. They have to, they have to confirm the deposits. They have reported. They have to comply within 60 days all the requirement of deposits taken from public. But if they do not comply with any requirement of deposits, those deposits are to be refunded back to the depositor. And during the intervening period, from the day the default has occurred until the date the depositor has been refunded back, those are being termed as deemed deposits. So auditor is to also to see whether during this intervening period, when they became deemed deposits, whether all the compliances have been complied with or not.
Sir, Ravinder Sungat ji ki query hai. As we get management certified inventory statements and the same can be verified with books, but how physical stocks be verified while doing audits after 3-4 months of financial year closing?
No. For that purpose, physical verification is not required. For this purpose, physical verification is not required. Only thing is that the quantitative details or the financial details given in the submitted statements to the banks or financial institution, those are to be matched with the books of accounts only. The requirement is that only, not for physical verification of stocks.
Your comment, sir, Kapoor sir?
See, I think Ashish ji ne ठीक बताया. See, what they are talking, they are saying that in agreement with the books of account. So one has to check. The only thing is that in the hindsight, what will happen, because it is expected that companies are giving statements without any stock. So that auditor has to actually be careful. He is not expected to verify the physical condition, but I think that statements are being those are genuine. So how the books of accounts are being recorded, on that the questions can come later. But here it is the agreement with the books of accounts.
Because this is a very important clause. Singh Saab, your comment, please.
Yeah, I've got two observations. One is, of course, I'll start with this. The requirement of, as per my interpretation, I could understand was that auditor needs to make his comments based upon the 10% clause variation. That 10% variation is quite a critical one. Now, that has to be seen. Now, if it is only from the statements being submitted to bank, the statements may or may not be as on 31st of March. So I think this gives an added responsibility on the auditors to see to it and apply their mind how they can have better assurance that as on that particular date, the variation clause is fulfilled, if I am not wrong. And the second one, my observation, I would like a clarification from Ashish was that my understanding was that CFS is now becoming applicable also under the consolidated statements, but previously, since it was not necessary in the consolidated statements to comment on any of the CARO comments by any other auditor, but now that had been made mandatory that if there is any qualification, you have to report in your consolidated financial statement. I think that was my understanding. But
No,
what you
that
have
is
said
that is
is,
what I also said, sir. I also said the same thing. If
then
there is
I
any,
heard, then I misheard you, where you
uh,
said that in CFS it is not required, only the qualification is to be reported.
Correct.
I
correct,
think,
correct. The
Correct.
ah,
qualification,
Correct.
you are going to do CFS for 10 items, 10 companies, for example. If any of them is
correct.
having any qualification, that is to be brought here. That's all. For CFS accounts, you need not to report. You need not
Correct.
to comment upon in CARO.
Correct. Correct.
Okay,
You
okay,
will not give
okay.
any qualification for CFS
Correct.
for CFS purposes.
So, are we saying that the auditors report in the qualifications we need to bring it because there is no CARO applicable on CFS?
No, the CARO will be
On
applicable there also in particular
that
company.
exact that's exactly was my point. Because
Yeah.
what interpretation by saying that only that thing is being brought, okay, my original thing is correct, so it's okay. It is
I also
applies
of the same
now.
view, sir. I am also of the same view.
Oh, maybe there was a communication gap on this. So I just wanted to clarify. Okay, fair
No,
enough.
I convey the
The
same manner. Probably some unheard may be there.
only thing now,
Also,
Kapoor Saab will let us know, and we can always discuss and come out with it, how the disclosure requirement will be done on this 10% variation, whether it will be quantitative only or whether quantitative and in value terms also. So that is a very critical area where we need to understand how the disclosure requirement is there.
See, let me break it into inventory part into two parts. Number one is 10% variation. See, what
True.
is the, I think, expectation of the government is that somewhere there is lot of variation in the physical verification and the figures at the books of account. Now they have come out some kind of a material standard, because otherwise we leave it to the judgment of the auditor. If it is material only,
Mhm.
then you should report. So they have specified that 10%, and 10% is with reference to, according to me, is with the reference to the quantitative value at the end of the year. That is one part. So 10% is also they have brought it in the case of even physical verification of property, plant, and equipment also. So 10%
Very
is a,
true.
so 10% they have devised. So see, earlier in Schedule 6 there used to be, anything more than 5% of the turnover and an expense should be given separately. So they have defined a materiality standard. That's number one. The second, I think, very important question, which I think Ashish was trying to reply, CFS is another separate issue. The more important question what Ravinder Sungar has asked, and I think I share his concern, that today quarterly, so it's not question, today quarterly, say in the June quarter, I think Ashish has raised very good issue. So now when a company, this COVID 2019 impacted companies will approach to the bank for raising further loans on the basis of the credit limit, any working capital limit, on the basis of security of the current assets, whether those quarterly statements match or agree with the books of account or not. According to Ashish, since the only agreement is required, valuation of the inventories may not be that important at that point of time. But somewhere I think liability is building upon the auditor that at least these much stocks were there, maybe not of that physical value, because there must be many instances with the banker, say, as I think Ashish put it rightly, that now you are more acting not any behalf of the shareholder, you are, I think, perhaps going to work for each and every bank. The banks, they could not do this work, so they've shifted the responsibility to the auditor. So this giving quarterly statement, Ravinder Sungarji, should agree with the books of account, but you have to be very careful that such kind of stock actually exists. I will say that please, for God's sake, do not blindly accept that statement, because when you're recording in your working paper, आप ये कहेंगे जी मैंने तो ये मैनेजमेंट की किताब में था, उसके बेसिस पे, वो उन्होंने बैंक को दिया और मैंने उसको वेरीफाई कर लिया है, एवरीथिंग इज ऑल राइट. Tomorrow, first of all, I think one point Ashish also made very interestingly, whether I'll take the statement from the bank and from the client. Now, whether I have to verify externally from the bank confirmation that is that the same statement which have been given to them, whether those statements match or not. So all those issues would arise. But physical verification is not coming into picture at all. So agreement is important. But I think it's going a step further, looking at the client's financial position, I should be able to make it out कि उतना स्टॉक उसके पास होगा या नहीं होगा, या कोई इन्फ्लेट करके तो लोन के लिमिट रेज नहीं कर रहा है. द थर्ड पॉइंट
That
वाज,
is
आई
absolutely.
राकेश जी आपने रेज किया था सीएस के ऊपर. इट्स अ वेरी फनी पॉइंट. ये सिर्फ शो करता है कि हमारे गवर्नमेंट के जो ब्यूरोक्रेट्स हैं, दे आर नॉट एबल टू डू एनीथिंग. दे आर सिंपली आस्किंग कि बाबा एक कंपनी की 250 सब्सिडरी हैं, उस सब्सिडरी में किसी ऑडिटर ने कोई रिपोर्ट क्वालिफाई करी है, उसका पैरा नंबर, कारो का पैरा नंबर और उसका डिटेल, उस कंपनी का नाम जो है वो रिपोर्ट के अंदर में आएगा. इट्स अ वेरी फनी
बिल्कुल ठीक.
सिचुएशन. इट्स अ वेरी फनी सिचुएशन. आपको ऑडिटर को कोई बैंक काम नहीं करना चाहता है, ऑडिटर काम करेगा. एसएफआईओ काम उसको समझ में नहीं आता है, ऑडिटर काम करेगा. सो सारा काम अगर ऑडिटर ही करेगा, मेरे को तो ये नहीं समझ में आएगा कि अभी अगर जून से ये सब काम शुरू हो जाएगा तो ऑडिटर क्या करेगा और किस किस तरह की स्टेटमेंट बनाएगा, तो कौन कौन कंपनी क्या क्या काम करेगी. सो दैट इज वेयर माय पॉइंट वाज. थैंक यू
सर. आजकल एक और भी आई ऐड टू दैट, आजकल ये भी बड़ा पुराना चला आ रही है प्रॉब्लम कि कंपनीज व्हाट डू दे डू, there are 10 banks, they give different stock statements, data statement to different banks. वहां पर भी एक प्रॉब्लम है. how you will you go to each and every bank?
आशीष जी
सॉरी कपूर साहब,
आपने आशीष जी बिल्कुल ठीक बोला. इनफैक्ट यही समस्याएं हैं. इनफैक्ट दी जेनेसिस, ये ऐसी तरह की क्लॉजेस क्यों कारों में आई हैं, क्योंकि वो कह रहे हैं कि कंपनीज ऐसा काम कर रही हैं. अरे भाई, कंपनी जैसा काम कर रही है तो ऑडिटर को आपने इंस्पेक्टर बना दिया है क्या? मेरा सवाल ये है.
मैंने कहा ना सर, उनको ब्लड हाउंड हो गए हैं. नाउ ही हैज टू वर्क एज ए ब्लड हाउंड.
होगा. मुझे तो लगता है कोई ऑडिटर इतना टाइम कहाँ लगाएगा, कहाँ से क्या क्या लाएगा वो.
कहाँ उसकी इतनी फीस ही नहीं पूरी होगी सर, उसको एम्प्लॉइज की फीस नहीं मिलेगी.
सर
पूरी
फीस
कवर
का
हो पाएगी.
पॉइंट नहीं है ना. आपने कहा ऑडिट लिया तो उससे फीस का और क्वालिटी का कोई मतलब नहीं है. राकेश जी आप कुछ कह रहे थे.
हाँ, वो एक्चुअली आशीष जी, मेरा एक छोटा सा, आपकी बात मुझे बड़ी अच्छी लगी और बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग लगी. और ये शुरू में भी जब हम लोग इस प्रोफेशन में आए थे तो किताब में हम पढ़ते थे और डिस्कस करते थे कि ऑडिटर इज ए बार्किंग डॉग नॉट ए ब्लड हाउंड. तो बड़ा अच्छा लगता था कि चलो हम लोग आइदर वे हम लोग हैं तो डॉग ही, लेकिन कम से कम नॉर्मल डॉग इज गोइंग टू बी ए फेथफुल एंड ही विल इंडिपेंडेंटली बार्क व्हेनेवर रिक्वायर्ड. नाउ अब कपूर साहब कह रहे, हाँ, अब कपूर साहब कह रहे हैं कि बैंक भी, स्टेक होल्डर भी, सब कुछ. तो नाउ वी आर सपोज टू बी ब्लड हाउंड. उसमें भी मेरे को कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है कि भाई कुत्ता ही है, कोई बात नहीं. प्रॉब्लम इज दिस ब्लड हाउंड is going to be having how many masters? Now that is the problem. I am willing to have one master ICI, okay, fine. If anything is there, you hang me. Today ICI can hang me, NAFRA can hang me, NCLT can hang me, auditor can hang me, I can be banned, no auditor.
SFIO नया बनाया सर,
SFIO में hand it. Income tax can revisit the accounts.
MCA बहुत ज्यादा ग्रेविट हो गया.
And at the end of the day, I think auditor must be from now onwards, and preferably, I will always have some Mangalwar fasting, some puja, always, so that I am lucky at least for next 8 years, because 5 years NCLT plus 3 years books of account. I should be lucky enough that I am not getting caught. So auditor has to be lucky first, rest everything later on. That is my independent observation. You can
he'll become more
in a lighter vein. देखिए, ऐसा I can talk at length on the basis of the legal case studies कि how the role of the auditor has been changing. मेरे तो दिल के बहुत पास है. अभी उनका मानना यह कि auditor has become a lap dog. वो क्लाइंट की गोदी में बैठता है और उसी के हिसाब से काम करता है। ही शुड नॉट बी लैपटॉप। तो उन्होंने अब इसको इतना इसलिए बहुत क्रिटिकल बना दिया है। मेरा तो सिर्फ पर्पस ये है कि दैट कम से कम प्रोफेशन में कोई तो आवाज उठाए, कोई तो इसके ऊपर काम, किसी ने पढ़ा, किस तरह से पढ़ा। वो तो कह रहे हैं, देखिए प्रश्न इस बात का है कि सब ये जितने भी पॉइंट्स आए हैं, अब जैसे आशीष जी ने कहा कि हर बैंक में क्लाइंट डिफरेंट स्टेटमेंट देता है और वहां से लिमिट लेता है। सेम स्टेटमेंट के ऊपर सेम लोन होता है, एक ही स्टेटमेंट को 10 बैंक में दिया जाता है। अब ये रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑडिटर की हो जाएगी दैट एक ही स्टेटमेंट के ऊपर 10 बैंक से लोन मिला। एग्रीमेंट विद द बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट है, बट अगर वही सेम स्टेटमेंट 10 बैंक को गई है और लिमिट आई है, क्योंकि ये जो है एसएफआईओ ने, देखिए जितने भी इसके अंदर में पॉइंट्स आए हैं पिछले 3 साल, 4 साल, 5 साल में, वी कैन डिस्कस ऑल 100 केसेस। मैंने पिछले दिन क्वालिटी डेयरी का नाम भी लिया था, सीजी पावर का नाम भी लिया था, मैं आईएलएफएस का नाम भी ले सकता हूँ। एवरग्रीनिंग ऑफ लोन्स कहाँ कैसे कैसे हुआ है।
अभी सर ये मनपसंद बेवरेजेस, वर्कांगी, कॉक्स एंड किंग्स, ये सभी में हुआ है सर।
मन पसंद आप इनको आप किसी में भी देखिए, टर्नओवर की सेल हुई है, एंट्रीज टू एंट्रीज वो हुई है, तो ये सब आए उसी बेसिस के ऊपर में है। बट माय पॉइंट इज दैट what we are expecting still from the auditor and how he will go about doing his work. The main issue is that. सर क्वेश्चन ले लीजिए।
चलो जी, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन प्लीज।
Sir, next question Ravinder Sungarja ka hi hai. Also, in case of adjustments in financial accounting for order under section 143(3), 147 additions, what if appeal is pending?
ये अपने आप में ग्रे एरिया है, बट अपील इज पेंडिंग। दैट टाइम you can report in your CARO that this is the situation. This has if the company has not taken in the financial accounting in its books of accounts, then you can report it that this was the status, this was the order, and they have not reported it. They have not taken in the books of accounts. This is what you can do.
Sir, next query Antima ji ki hai. RBI reporting, please explain in detail, as mostly all small private companies are engaging in share loans granting not to public but to closely held related parties.
नहीं, प्राइवेट लिमिटेड में आरबीआई कहाँ एप्लीकेबल है? I could understand.
She is not clear about the query.
हाँ, not to public but to closely held related parties. इसमें आरबीआई इन्वॉल्व नहीं है कहीं पर भी। आरबीआई इन्वॉल्व है डीम्ड डिपॉजिट्स के केस में, दैट्स ऑल। डीम्ड डिपॉजिट, इफ द डिपॉजिट हैज बिकम डीम्ड डिपॉजिट, then you have to comply with that. You have to see whether the RBI, if there is any requirement of RBI also, or otherwise deemed deposit में वो भी नहीं है, तो कंपनीज एक्ट में है, that's all. कंपनीज एक्ट 42 62 का आपने compliance कर दिया, that is good enough.
Sir, actually इनकी query continue हो रही है आगे. These small companies are not having any bank loans or public money. Still RBI reporting is necessary.
These small companies are not having bank loan, public money. Still RBI reporting is necessary.
ये एनबीएफसी तो नहीं कोई किसान निधि?
एनबीएफसी के केस में तो आरबीआई की आपको जो कंपनी के साइज पे मैटर नहीं करती है, वो तो एनबीएफसी है, तो एनबीएफसी यू हैव टू कंप्लाई विद। सीआईसी है तो आरबीआई की कंप्लायंसेस करने ही करने हैं आपको।
वही सीआईसी उसी एनबीएफसी की बात कर रहे हैं।
हाँ, और तो कोई नहीं आता है सर इसमें, स्मॉल कंपनीज में नहीं आता है आरबीआई रिपोर्टिंग।
सर नेक्स्ट क्वेरी हरमीत सिंह जी की है. Shall any disclosure be required if projections given to bank etc. are not met in audited financials?
Shall any disclosure be given projections given to the bank? No. This is not related to the projection given to the bank. This is the statements, quarterly statements. They are talking about the submissions of actual debtors, actual stock, actual inventory, actual current assets. Whatever you give as per your books of accounts, you submit to the bankers or financial institution, that you have to match with your books of accounts. Projections are never being met with the books of account, never being matched, cannot be matched. So this is only the actuals, whatever you submit to the bank. Next question, please.
Next query Anuj Jindal ji ki hai. Kindly explain the provisions of consolidated financial statement.
देखिए, consolidated financial statements are that the company which is having its subsidiaries or which is having its joint ventures or nowadays associate companies, whereby you are having up to 20% of stake. 20% of interest. Those are also to be consolidated, right? And accordingly, you have to, during that consolidation, for the consolidated statement, for the consolidated, you have to report a separate statement. You have to report as an auditor for consolidated statements also. That these are the consolidated statements. I do a report like this. I do a report like this. You report like this. There you need not to comment upon. There the CARO is not applicable. You need not to comment any CARO applicability on the consolidated financial statements. Whatever the qualifications there in any individual company which you have consolidated, if there is any, that you have to just disclose and in your consolidated financial audit report. That's all. This is the requirement.
सर मेंबर्स की क्वेरी है, क्या आपने पीपीटी बनाया हुआ है सर आज के इसका प्रोग्राम का?
आज का पीपीटी नहीं है, और हमारे पास पीपीटी है विजय कपूर साहब का, वो भेज देंगे।
तो कपूर साहब से रिक्वेस्ट है कि सर जो आपने पीछे मेहनत की थी एक कैरो 2020,
देखिए नॉलेज में कोई पढ़ना चाहे, मुझे तो यही बड़ी खुशी है कि कोई कह रहा है पीपीटी दे दो, पढ़ेगा भाई, मैं तो खुद ही पढ़ने को दिक्कत होती है। आप दे दीजिए।
पर सर पीपीटी में क्या हेडलाइंस ही होती हैं एक्चुअली, तो हेडलाइंस होती हैं, वो किससे पढ़ पाएगा?
ऐसे देखो, ऐसे कंडेंस्ड फॉर्म में होता है ना, तो लोगों को मदद मिलती है। देखिए सीएफएस में प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड देयर इज अ वेरी, अनिल जिंदल जी, सीएफएस में बड़ा सिंपल सा है कि उसको, आपको बड़ी हंसी की बात है, एक पर्टिकुलर केस के अंदर में यही पता नहीं लगा 3 महीने तक इस कंपनी की सब्सिडीज कितनी है, उसकी फिगर चेंज होती रही। तो एमसीए को ये बड़ी चिंता हो गई है, तो उसने एक जगह तो सारी सब्सिडीज के नाम भी मांगे हैं कि अगर आपने कहीं लोन एडवांस ग्रांट के सबके नाम लिखिए, क्या क्या पैसे किस किस को दिए हैं, एग्रीगेट अमाउंट कितना और बैलेंस एट द एंड ऑफ द ईयर कितना है। सीएफएस के अंदर इतना है कि आप उस कंपनी का नाम और उस कारो का पैराग्राफ नंबर, उसकी डिटेल, सिर्फ उसकी एक चार्ट सा बनेगा, उसमें नाम आएगा, उसका पैराग्राफ नंबर आएगा, नॉट मोर देन दैट। अब अगर किसी को पैराग्राफ नंबर में क्या लिखा है वो उस कंपनी की रिपोर्ट खोल के पढ़ना पड़ेगा।
सर नेक्स्ट क्वेरी सीए लवलीन कुमार जी की है। Up to what extent auditor can rely upon management report of the company for the purpose of CARO 2020?
Not for any purpose, sir. अब जो है मैनेजमेंट रिपोर्ट को आप, you cannot substitute it with your audit work. You do your audit work. You can obtain management report as is side information, but you have to do your homework also. Management report is an additional document, not a supporting or substitute or supporting document. So you have to do your audit, presuming that you do not have any management report, and then finally you take management report also, because a few items like I explained you कि defaulting company का नहीं पता लगेगा आपको ये नहीं पता लगेगा कि as I explained you कि बेनामी ट्रांजैक्शन एक्ट में उनका कहीं उनके ऊपर कोई इनिशिएट हुई है कि नहीं हुई है, क्या उनके एग्जिस्टेंस में उनके ऊपर है कि नहीं है। You can, there is no source from where you can obtain this information. Only management representation can give you this information. Similarly, income tax assessments orders हैं, you will not come to know कि income tax auditor orders जितने कंपनी ने आपको दे दिए हैं, या उसने कहा 1 या 2 या 4 या 5, जो उसने बोला इतने ही हैं, those are the only one, उसके अलावा कोई और नहीं आया इस साल में। How you will know? Only through management representation. विसल ब्लोअर का आपके पास मैकेनिज्म के अलावा you will never know कि हाँ कितनी विसल ब्लोअर कंप्लेंट्स आई थी, वो थ्रू you can know only through management complaints, management representation only. So इसमें आपको मतलब यह है, स्कोप इतना वाइड हो गया है, you have to have your judgment so widely कि अब आपको बहुत involvement of time and effort is required.
आशीष जी ने बिल्कुल ठीक टारगेट पे बोला कि आपको बिल्कुल इसके ऊपर रिलाई नहीं करना है। फ्रेंड्स, आई थिंक राज जी बड़ी मेहनत कर रहे हैं, इतने सारे प्रोग्राम कर रहे हैं, और मैंने सारी लाइफ अपना ऑडिटिंग स्टैंडर्ड ही पढ़ाए हैं। अभी जो है ऑडिटिंग के अंदर जो स्टैंडर्ड का नाम भी है वो मैनेजमेंट रिप्रेजेंटेशन नहीं है, वो रिटर्न रिप्रेजेंटेशन है। उस स्टैंडर्ड को ही अगर आप समझ लें, उस स्टैंड, देखिए आपने कहा जी आपको, अब जैसे अभी अपना आशीष जी ने कहा भी आप मैनेजमेंट से ले लेंगे किस टैक्स असेसमेंट हुई या नहीं हुई। मेरा ख्याल है सिंपली एक कागज लेके आपने फाइल में रख लिया, दैट इज नॉट सफिशिएंट। आपने उसके बाद में आपको कागज आपने किससे लेंगे, बोर्ड का साइन किया या ऑडिट कमेटी से अप्रूव किया हुआ। लेकिन जब आप साइन कर रहे थे आपने, अब मैं आपको बताता हूँ, जो आपने लीगल चार्जेस आपने कभी देखे अकाउंट्स में जो आए, आप उसमें देखिए कि इनकम टैक्स वाले के आपके कितने लीगल केसेस हुए हैं। आप इनकम टैक्स असेसमेंट की फाइलें मंगवा सकते हैं। द क्वेश्चन इज दैट सिंपली ब्लाइंडली, बिकॉज यू विल हैव टू ऐड ए स्टेप फर्दर कि ये मेरे को सर्टिफिकेट मिला, अरे मेरा माथा ठनकना चाहिए भी, क्या ऐसा ठीक है क्या? अरे मैं कहीं अपने क्लोजिंग स्टॉक को और अगले महीने की सेल को ही कोरिलेट नहीं कर पा रहा कि इतनी तो परचेज हुई, इतनी लेकिन सेल कहीं की कहीं दिखा दी। अरे भाई ये कैसे दिखा दी? समवेयर दैट कॉमन सेंस, जो आप रेशियोज की बात कर रहे थे, जो रेशियोज के इंडस्ट्री के नॉर्म्स है, मान लीजिए एक रेशियो का एक नॉर्म होता है, वो बिल्कुल ही वायलेट हो रहा है। आपकी सेल परचेज हुई नहीं, आपने कहीं इतने स्टॉक्स का दिखा दिया, आपने 10 जगह से पैसे ले लिए। सो ये सब चीजें जो है सब डॉट्स कनेक्ट हो रहे हैं। प्लीज फॉर गॉड सेक, वट एवर यू आर टेकिंग फ्रॉम द मैनेजमेंट, आप उसको इंडिपेंडेंटली एक बार कनेक्ट करके देखिए। किसी और आपके कागज से क्वेरी से कनेक्ट होता नहीं होता, आपको फर्दर किसी ऑफिसर से एक्सप्लेन लेना है, स्टेटमेंट लेना, वो आप लीजिए, आप लेके रखिए, नहीं तो कोई फाइल चेक करनी है फाइल कर चेक करिए, बट ब्लाइंडली डोंट रिलाई अपॉन एनी मैनेजमेंट और रिटन रिप्रेजेंटेशंस एज वी कॉल इट। आशीष जी आपने ठीक बोला,
बिल्कुल सही, आपने बिल्कुल सही बोला। यू हैव टू कनेक्ट ऑल द डॉट्स
वी
एंड
हैव टू
उसका
कनेक्ट ऑल द
कंक्लूजन
डॉट्स।
आना चाहिए कि सभी डॉट्स कंक्लूड कर रहे हैं और कनेक्ट हो रहे हैं और कंक्लूड कर रहे हैं और आपस में मैच कर रहे हैं। सिंपली मैनेजमेंट रिप्रेजेंटेशन में कुछ और लिखा है और आपकी डिस्क्लोज आपका कुछ और निकल कर आ रहा है इंफॉर्मेशन, तो यू शुड नॉट रिलाई अपॉन मैनेजमेंट इंफॉर्मेशन एंड यू टुमारो यू कैन नॉट गिव एज एन एविडेंस कि मैनेजमेंट ने ये प्रेजेंट दिया था, मैं उसी बेस पे रिलाई करके आई डिड नॉट गो फर्दर डीप इनटू दैट। That will not be acceptable in any court, any tribunal, any authority.
राकेश जी आप मुझे ये बताइए, लोन एंड एडवांसेस ग्रांटेड बाय द कंपनी, मैंने किस किस को लोन दिया, किस किस सब्सिडरी को दिया, फिर वो रीपे नहीं कर पा रही उसकी मैंने एक लिस्ट बनाई, फिर वो रीपे टाइम से नहीं कर पाई, मैंने वो टाइम भी बताया, फिर मैंने उसको लोन फिर एवरग्रीनिंग ऑफ लोन कर दिया। फिर मैं जब जाता हूँ लोन एंड एडवांसेस जो मैं डिफॉल्ट, अरे मैं तो खुद तो लोन एंड एडवांसेस डिफॉल्ट कर रहा हूँ, अपनी सब्सिडीज को मैं कहां से लोन और एडवांसेस आके दे रहा हूँ? ये सब के सब चीजें 1 मिनट के अंदर में सब इकट्ठी हो जाएंगी। अरे भाई साहब आपके पास पैसे कहाँ से आए? आप खुद तो मांगते फिर रहे हैं, खुद तो अपनी रीपेमेंट्स कर नहीं पा रहे, डिफॉल्ट हो रहे हैं सारे के सारे, अभी कौन से कहाँ से पैसे किस किस को दे रहे हैं एवरग्रीनिंग? एक जो डिमांड लोन्स का था कि विदाउट एनी टर्म्स ऑफ कंडीशन, विदाउट एनी डिमांड जो लोन आपने दे दिए वो आपने दिए, उनकी एक अलग से रिक्वायरमेंट है। So let's understand it, loans and advancements, advance is granted, इन्वेस्टमेंट सिक्योरिटी जो राकेश जी ने भी बोला था, उसकी 6 या 7 क्लासेस हैं। लोन एंड एडवांसेस टेकन, टर्म लोन आपने किया, उसका पर्पस क्या है? आई थिंक यू हैव टू कनेक्ट एवरीथिंग टुगेदर। इट्स ए पिक्चर ऑफ हॉरर्स अकॉर्डिंग टू मी।
एक्चुअली इसमें क्या है कि you have to prepare at least on quarterly basis the cash flows as well as fund flow on your own without obtaining information, without having intervention of company. When you will prepare the fund flow cash flow information on quarterly basis at least on your own, then you will be able to know all these points which have been raised by कपूर साहब के उसमें डॉट्स कनेक्ट हो रहे हैं कि नहीं हो रहे हैं। पता लगेगा आपको किसी क्वार्टर में कहीं ना कहीं नेगेटिविटी आ गई तो कहां से उसने मीट आउट किया पैसे।
सर अप्रैल में जून में तो सेल ही नहीं है सर लोगों की, अब देखो क्या हालत क्या होगी।
बिल्कुल, बहुत अभी आगे का पता नहीं सर कब तक क्या चलेगी और आगे
तो
कौन सा सेल होने है,
तो हालत क्या होगी।
और ये क्लॉज 19
छोटा सा है,
मटेरियल अनसर्टेनिटी, ये बहुत ज्यादा इम्पैक्ट करेगा, गोइंग कंसर्न ये बहुत इम्पैक्ट करेगा इस फाइनेंशियल ईयर को।
एक इसमें एक पॉइंट ये था कि आपने ये कपूर साहब सही पॉइंट पकड़ा कि भाई लोन एंड एडवांसेस में चलिए उसमें तो 3 क्राइटेरिया मैं मान लूँ कि ठीक है भाई, जिसको हमने दिया हुआ टर्म्स एंड कंडीशंस में देख लूँगा कि भाई एबनॉर्मल नहीं होना चाहिए, या फिर जो है आ रहा है नहीं आ रहा है टाइम पे, और ज़्यादातर कि भाई टाइम फ्रेम वेदर डिफाइंड और नॉट, ज़्यादातर वो उस टाइप के केसेस मैनेजमेंट अपने आदमी को या रिलेटेड पार्टी को ही देता है, ठीक है, प्रिकॉशन। लेकिन एक जो सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम जो मेरे को नहीं आई नज़र आई वो ये है कि लोन्स एंड एडवांसेस के लिए तो फिर भी मैं एप्लीकेशन ऑफ माइंड मेरा मैं कर दूंगा, इंडिपेंडेंट व्यू ले लूंगा। इन्वेस्टमेंट ऑल्सो इज दैट। नाउ टॉकिंग अबाउट इन्वेस्टमेंट and dealing with the management decisions, now that becomes a very very tricky situation साहब। कपूर साहब अब आप ही डिटेल में बताइएगा क्योंकि मेरे को तो समझ में नहीं आया, इवन एज एन इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर मैं जब सवाल पूछूं अपने ऑडिटर से कि भैया ये बताओ मुझे कि ये जो इन्वेस्टमेंट हुआ है उसमें आपका क्या ओपिनियन, वो बेचारा क्या बताएगा, मेरे को तो समझ अभी तक नहीं आया, क्योंकि ये तो प्योरली मैनेजमेंट डिसीजन है। उसमें ऑडिटर कहां से क्या इंडिपेंडेंट ओपिनियन देगा, मैं नहीं जानता ये क्या है, इनका पर्पज और इनका ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है।
सर मैं थोड़ा सा इंटरवीन करके बताता हूँ सर। इसमें होता क्या है, व्हाट वी डू ऑलरेडी, इसमें इम्पेयरमेंट चेक होती है। यू नीड टू गो वेयर यू हैव इन्वेस्टेड, जिस भी सब्सिडरी में, ज्वाइंट वेंचर में आपने इन्वेस्ट किया है, इतना बड़ा ह्यूज टास्क है ये अपने आप में। यू हैव टू असेस दैट कंपनी ऑल्सो। उसकी बैलेंस शीट, आपको ऑडिटेड बैलेंस शीट असेस करनी है, वेदर दैट कंपनी इज हैविंग पॉजिटिव नेट वर्थ और नॉट। क्या उसकी इंट्रिंसिक वैल्यू ऑफ द शेयर जो 10 रुपए की वैल्यू है वो 10 रुपए की है, नहीं है। इफ मोर देन 10%, तो आपको उसको अकाउंट फॉर करना है इन द बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स ऑफ द ऑडिटी। और वो इम्पेयरमेंट ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट्स बोलते हैं उसे। वो अपने आप में बहुत बड़ा ट्रेमेंडस टास्क है। और जहां ज्यादा इन्वेस्टमेंट्स हो जाती हैं, ज्यादा सब्सिडरीज हैं, ज्यादा एसोसिएट्स हैं, जॉइंट वेंचर्स हैं, वहां करते करते पागल हो जाते हैं आप लोग। एक कंपनी, एक पूरा का पूरी टीम उसी पर्पज के लिए लगी रहती है, इम्पेयरमेंट के लिए। और फिर इसके लिए उसके बाद में इसमें झगड़े होते हैं मैनेजमेंट से, क्यों मैनेजमेंट कहती है नहीं ये दे डू गिव के जी, नहीं ये इसकी प्रोजेक्शन ऐसी है, ये कंपनी मीट आउट कर लेगी, वो कर लेगी, आप कहते हो नहीं कर पाएगी। तो बड़े झगड़े होते हैं इम्पेयरमेंट के लिए। मैं बिकॉज कंपनी डू नॉट वांट टू डू इम्पेयरमेंट अकाउंटिंग। यदि वो कर लेगी तो उसकी खुद कंपनी नेगेटिव में आ जाएगी, परफॉर्मेंस नेगेटिव में आ जाएगी। तो बड़े सारे इसके अंदर प्रॉब्लम्स है सर।
नहीं, आई विल ऐड। राकेश जी जरा मेरी बात थोड़ा सा वो है, देखिए मेरा तो ये मानना है, इवन लोन्स एंड एडवांसेस की भी टर्म्स एंड कंडीशन चेक करना 65 से आया, 1975 में आया। पहले सिक्योर्ड लोन पे था, फिर अनसिक्योर्ड लोन पे आया। मेरे हिसाब से वो भी फाइनेंशियल ऑडिटर की ड्यूटी नहीं होनी चाहिए थी। इट्स आल्सो बिजनेस डिसीजन, नंबर 1।
यस।
अच्छा अभी मैं आपको बताता, इन्वेस्टमेंट की सुनिए, मजे वाली बात सुनिए। इन्होंने इन्वेस्टमेंट, गारंटी, सिक्योरिटी तीनों चीज लेकर आए, लेकिन 2271A में 2271A में 143(1) में एक एक्सेप्शनल रिपोर्टिंग है। इन्वेस्टमेंट में आशीष जी 2 इश्यू होंगे। एक तो ये कि मैंने देखिए, एज ए कंपनी आई कैन इन्वेस्ट इनटू एन नंबर ऑफ कंपनीज, बट इफ आई हैव इन्वेस्टेड इनटू माय सब्सिडरीज, आई विल से कि यार ये तो मेरी परमानेंट इन्वेस्टमेंट है, मेरी अपनी वो है, मैं तो इसको, आई एम नॉट मेकिंग इन्वेस्टमेंट्स टू मेक, सी इम्पेयरमेंट की तब बात आती है इफ आई एम मेकिंग इन्वेस्टमेंट्स टू मेक प्रॉफिट्स, I'm trying to earn something out of it. If I'm running a business, if I'm trying to invest in that company, I'm a business partner in that. उसके अंदर ये क्या है कि अभी ये झगड़ा होगा स्टॉक मार्केट, इफ इन्वेस्टमेंट्स आर कमिंग बिलो, से मैंने 10 रुपए का शेयर लिया था, आज उस शेयर की कीमत 4 रुपए या 5 रुपए रह गई है, इट इज इम्पेयरमेंट, तो एक चीज हो गई। इनफैक्ट 143(1) में आज भी एक क्लॉज एग्जिस्ट करती है कि इफ इन्वेस्टमेंट्स हैव फॉलन बिलो at the cost price, less than the cost price, even that has to be reported. So there are two things. Impairment तो किसी कंपनी ने कहीं भी इन्वेस्ट किया, एक विद रेफरेंस टू सब्सिडीज इन्वेस्टमेंट्स हमने सब्सिडीज में करी। Now this is a very crucial issue for 31st March ending, where the share market has fallen as a steep fall.
Yes.
In many of these companies, share market has come down very low. सर ये दो इश्यूज पे आएगा इन्वेस्टमेंट्स का, एंड उन सब कंपनी में बहुत भारी झगड़ा हो रहा है। मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, बहुत भारी झगड़ा हो रहा है मैनेजमेंट से। इट इज ए टेम्परेरी फॉल। ये तो भाई सर 6 महीने में एक वो ऐसा पैराग्राफ देंगे, ये सबका क्रिटिकल और एक की ऑडिट मैटर होगा 701 के अंडर में, यू नो। सो दिस इज गोइंग टू बी वेरी वेरी क्रिटिकल। सो लेट्स प्रोसीड सर। दिवाकर जी
सर वो लिस्टेड कंपनीज में तो क्या होना ना, लिस्टेड कंपनीज के आपने इन्वेस्टमेंट किया हुआ है, तो टिल द टाइम ऑफ योर साइनिंग ऑफ ऑडिट रिपोर्ट, जिस डेट को आप ऑडिट रिपोर्ट साइन कर रहे हो 31 मार्च, और ऑडिट रिपोर्ट अगस्त में आप साइन कर रहे हो, फॉर एग्जांपल जुलाई में साइन कर रहे हो, इन बिटवीन जो भी उसका एप्रिसिएशन हो गया, मान लो 10 रुपए वाला शेयर 4 रुपए का रह गया था 31 मार्च को, लेटर ऑन द वैल्यू हैज इंक्रीज टू 8 रुपीज, तो आप 8 रुपीज ले सकते हो एनी टाइम ड्यूरिंग द ईयर। वो चीज एक्सेप्टेबल है, बट 8 और 10 में भी डिफरेंस आएगा कि 8 रुपीज ही क्यों, 8 रुपीज के लिए भी नहीं मानेगी ना कंपनी, तो प्रॉब्लम वहां है।
वो नहीं मानेगी, नहीं
बिल्कुल।
इट्स गोइंग टू बी वेरी क्रिटिकल इशू। राकेश जी ने बड़ा अच्छे, तो उसको इन्वेस्टमेंट को आपको 2 तरीकों से देखना है। कंपनी मेकिंग
ने बहुत अच्छा पॉइंट रेज किया है,
तो कंपनी मेकिंग एन इन्वेस्टमेंट, और दूसरा एक इन्वेस्टमेंट इन ए सब्सिडरी। दीज आर 2 सेपरेट थिंग्स।
करेक्ट।
चलो जी, नेक्स्ट क्वेरी प्लीज।
सर नेक्स्ट क्वेरी सुरेश जैन जी की है। व्हाइल समिंग योर डिस्कशंस, प्लीज एनलाइट इंपॉर्टेंट चेंजेस इन द ईयर 2019-20 विद द लास्ट ईयर।
अरे भाई हमने तो सारे बताए हैं, हर जगह बताया। कारो 2016 से जो जो चेंजेस आए थे हमने सब में बताया।
जो
We have told you
प्रेजेंटेशन
each and
भेजेंगे
every
ना
one.
वो उनको बोलो,
जो
दिवाकर जी आप ही ने प्रेजेंटेशन बनाई थी मेरी, जो
हाँ जी।
प्रेजेंटेशन भेजे वो मुझे 7 एरियाज में मेजर प्रेजेंटेशन है, वो सब कुछ सब चेंजेस कंटेंट फॉर्म में है उसके अंदर में, वो
आप
देख लेंगे।
दिवाकर जी
इसके अलावा क्लॉज नंबर देखिए, क्लॉज नंबर 1, 2, 3, 9, ये जो है ना मेजर चेंजेस आए हैं काफी, जिनमें हैवी चेंजेस आए हैं वो ये क्लॉजेज हैं। यू कैन गो थ्रू एंड
बाकी मेरे ख्याल से 19, 20,
नया
21
नया आया है फ्रॉड्स के ऊपर, नहीं वो आया है एक इंटरनल ऑडिट का उन्होंने नया ऐड किया है, और सीआईसी का नया ऐड किया है, ऑडिटर रेजिग्नेशन नया ऐड किया है, कुछ क्लॉजेज 19 क्लॉज 19 में भी ऐड की हैं। दीज वर द चेंजेस विद कारो 2016 से जो कंपैरेटिव।
सुरेश जी से रिक्वेस्ट है कि या हमें मेल करके मांग लेंगे पीपीटी, या हमारे व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप में आ जाएंगे तो वहां पे शेयर करेंगे। नेक्स्ट क्वेरी
ठीक है।
प्लीज।
सर नेक्स्ट क्वेरी हरमीत सिंह जी की है, shall MRL be sufficient for PV of a financial FA?
क्या हुआ? प्रेजेंट वैल्यू ऑफ फिक्स एसेट्स।
ठीक सर।
हाँ जी,
एमआरएल क्या हुआ सर इसमें? मैनेजमेंट
मैनेजमेंट
रिप्रेजेंटेशन लेटर।
मैनेजमेंट रिप्रेजेंटेशन लेटर
रिप्रेजेंटेटिव सफिशिएंट फॉर पीवी ऑफ एफए। नहीं सर, वो तो रिवैल्यूएशन वाले में तो कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, रिवैल्यूएशन में तो रजिस्टर्ड वैल्यूअर से किया कराया है, और बाकी तो आपने क्वांटिटेटिव डिटेल्स देखनी है एफए के केस में तो, और एग्जिस्टेंस
नेक्स्ट
देखनी है, फिजिकल एग्जिस्टेंस देखनी है, वैल्यूएशन तो देखनी नहीं है आपको।
सर नेक्स्ट क्वेरी सुनील कुमार जी की है, suppose a company have to submit DP statement every month, then whether auditor have to check entire 12 statement and report accordingly, or it should be restricted to quarterly or annually?
देखिए आप क्वार्टरली, इसमें अभी रिस्ट्रिक्टेड क्वार्टरली के लिए ही किया गया है। यू ऑब्टेन देयर क्वार्टरली स्टेटमेंट 30th जून, 30th सितंबर एंड सो ऑन, एंड देन यू रिपोर्ट अपॉन दैट ओनली। मंथली को अभी नहीं उन्होंने टच किया है।
Sir, next query Tanvi ji ki hai from Kanwal, from where we can have formats of information in which company should be ready to provide to auditor.
फॉर्मेट, ये तो भैया आपको अपना ऑडिट कर रहे हो, आपको दिमाग लगाना ही पड़ेगा, अपनी जजमेंट लेनी पड़ेगी, अपना टाइम स्पेंड करना पड़ेगा।
See, according to me, I think I have not seen the final guidance note issued by the ICAI. In fact, ICAI should do two things. They have issued an exposure draft, how to guidance note on CARO 2020 exposure draft आया है, उसके अंदर में उनको चेकलिस्ट भी देना चाहिए और उनको ड्राफ्ट फॉर्मेट भी देने चाहिए, जो बिकॉज मेरे ख्याल से जो आशीष जी ने बात ठीक बोली थी कि आपको, इनफैक्ट जो मैंने भी अपनी प्रेजेंटेशन में पॉइंट डाला था कि आप अपने कंपनीज को अलर्ट कर दीजिए कि नेक्स्ट ईयर में ये इन्फॉर्मेशन है, और ये जो सज्जन ने फॉर्मेट मांगे बिल्कुल ठीक मांगे हैं, तो ये फॉर्मेट थोड़े से कुछ तो इसी कारो के ऑर्डर में बने हुए हैं, और देख लेंगे आप। लेकिन जो इंस्टीट्यूट का गाइडेंस नोट है मेरे हिसाब से उसके अंदर में फॉर्मेट जरूर होंगे जिन फॉर्मेट को हम आपको इंफॉर्मेशन मांगनी पड़ेगी।
फॉर्मेट्स नहीं है सर, चेकलिस्ट है। चेकलिस्ट आप अपना चेकलिस्ट दीजिए और अकॉर्डिंगली अपने बिजनेस, अपनी कंपनी के अकॉर्डिंगली उसे मोटे मोटे चेंज कीजिए अपने अकॉर्डिंगली।
चलिए खैर, वो आई थिंक फॉर्मेट्स बन सकते हैं, ऐसा कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, लेकिन थोड़ा मुश्किल काम है, थोड़ा मुश्किल काम है। आई एग्री
सर नेक्स्ट क्वेरी है, how much investigation should auditor do to unearth frauds or just rely on company?
नहीं, इसमें ऑडिटर नीड नॉट टू डू एनी इन्वेस्टिगेशन, he has to comment upon the frauds which are in the knowledge of the company. Nothing new fraud he can consider for. If he has come across any fraud which is not in the knowledge of the company, he has to discuss that fraud with the company, with the board of the company will discuss in the board, and then he has to report upon that fraud only. That's all. And that report, that fraud has to be reported to the central government. New fraud he cannot consider.
नहीं, आई थिंक थोड़ा सा आशीष जी मेरा इसमें फर्क है। देखिए ऐसा है कि नॉर्मली स्पीकिंग, बिकॉज देयर इज ऐसे 240 ऑडिटिंग स्टैंडर्ड है, 240 पूरा का पूरा। पिछले लेक्चर में शायद मैंने ये बताया भी था कि ऑडिटर्स जो, आई थिंक राकेश जी बात कर रहे हैं कि वॉच डॉग से ब्लड हाउंड तो मैं नहीं कहूँगा बना या नहीं बना, या फॉरेंसिक ऑडिटर बना या नहीं बना, लेकिन उस तरफ हम जा रहे हैं, मैं आपकी बात मानता हूँ। मैंने लास्ट टाइम भी ये कहा था कि देखिए ऐसा है कि अभी जो रिक्वायरमेंट एक तरह से है, लेकिन कंपनी के नॉलेज में है या नहीं, आई डोंट एग्री विद दैट। ऑडिटर हैज ए रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी। देखिए 1983 में जो हमने ऑडिटिंग स्टैंडर्ड निकाला था उसका सिंपल नाम था फ्रॉड एंड एरर। 2003 में एक स्टैंडर्ड आया AAS4, जिसको हम कहते थे द ऑडिटर्स रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी टू कंसीडर फ्रॉड एंड एरर। 2008 में उस स्टैंडर्ड का नाम बदल गया द ऑडिटर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी रिलेटिंग टू फ्रॉड। एक तो हमने एरर ड्रॉप कर दिया क्योंकि एरर इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं, एरर इज ऑलवेज अनइंटेंशनल, और हमने कहा ऑडिटर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी रिलेटिंग टू फ्रॉड। पहले हम करते थे ऑडिटर विल कंसीडर फ्रॉड एंड एरर व्हाइल डूइंग द ऑडिट ऑफ फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स। तो आशीष जी इसमें चेंज आ रहा है। नो प्लीज, आई एम वेरी क्लियर ऑन दिस। इट्स नॉट दैट आई विल सिंपली आस्क द मैनेजमेंट, कंपनी से पूछूंगा अभी आपकी नॉलेज में। सी व्हेन आई एम डूइंग द ऑडिट आई शुड बी एबल टू कैच व्हाइल परफॉर्मिंग द ऑडिट प्रोसीजर कि अब ये फ्रॉड हुआ या नहीं हुआ है। व्हेन आई एम टॉकिंग ऑफ रिस्क ऑफ मटेरियल मिस स्टेटमेंट्स, अगर मैं किसी वैल्यूएशन को फिगर को देख रहा हूँ फिक्स्ड एसेट्स की या इंटेंजिबल्स की, या उसके अंदर में क्या है, व्हेन आई एम लुकिंग एट द अकाउंटिंग एस्टिमेट, जितने भी अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड्स कंपनी ने लगाए हैं उनके एस्टिमेट्स को है, क्योंकि मैनेजमेंट के ऊपर बहुत प्रेशर होता है। नॉर्मली हम ये कहते हैं टू व्हेन दे डिक्लेयर द रिजल्ट्स टू मैनिपुलेट द अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसीज। सो ऑडिटर विल हैव टू बी अलर्ट टू दैट। सिंपली having the knowledge is I think will not serve the purpose। और इस क्लॉज को मैं फिर से पढ़ रहा था, अभी आपने बोला whether any fraud by the company or any fraud on the company has been noticed or reported
Correct.
during the year. So
Correct, sir. Sir,
fraud by the
बोल-
company or noticed
हाँ,
on the company or by the company or by any, so the fraud is done by the company itself। वो भी हम एक बार हमने सवाल
correct.
मॉक कैरो में था, सवाल था, ये हमने उसको रिप्लाई किया था। तो फ्रॉड बाय द कंपनी आज की डेट में ज्यादा होते हैं सर। लेट्स अंडरस्टैंड, जितनी भी ये बड़ी बड़ी पब्लिक लिस्टेड कंपनीज हैं, दे आर अंडर सो मच ऑफ प्रेशर टू मैनिपुलेट द रिजल्ट्स। और ये मैक्सिमम ये देखिए अगले 1 साल 6 महीने में बहुत प्रेशर होगा कि फिगर्स ठीक से आए। और इसमें एक सबसे बड़ी आइटम है सर, आपको मैं बता दूं, आज की मैंने एक रिपोर्ट पढ़ी, इनफैक्ट हर कंपनी के अंदर में आई डू नॉट नो हाउ द डेफर्ड टैक्स एसेट्स आर बीइंग क्रिएटेड एंड दिस डेफर्ड टैक्स एसेट्स आर बिल्डिंग इन सच ए बिग अमाउंट। आज एचडीएफसी का लॉस आया है, एक्सिस का वो हुआ है, इनके अंदर हमने देखा है कि इतना बड़ा बड़ा मोटा अमाउंट डेफर्ड टैक्स एसेट्स का खड़ा कर दिया गया है। सो दीज आर द थिंग्स व्हिच आर नथिंग बट ये 200-250 करोड़ के डेफर्ड टैक्स एसेट्स आज की डेट में दिखा रहे हैं। दिस विल ऑल गो एब्सोल्युटली निल, यू नो, कहीं कुछ रियलाइज नहीं होना है। सो दिस इज नथिंग बट दिस थिंग। Now these are the things which are sure shot would bring a scarcely catch the auditor somewhere, you know, that on what basis की ऑडिट मैटर में लगाया नहीं लगाया, आपने इसको कैसे सेटिस्फाई किया, but these are nothing but there is something wrong somewhere।
I agree with you, sir.
मैटर सर,
I agree with you, जो आपने कहा बिल्कुल सही कहा, बट आपने 2 पार्ट में से ले लिया सर इसको। एक्चुअली फर्स्ट पार्ट है कि फ्रॉड हुआ या नहीं हुआ, दूसरा है मिसरिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ द अकाउंटिंग इंफॉर्मेशन, फाइनेंशियल इंफॉर्मेशन। जो आपने कहा कि corporates are stressed nowadays, they're pressurized nowadays that they have to do those things. That is not a fraud actually, that is the misrepresentation of figure, misrepresentation of financial books or financial numbers etc. वो जो चीज है वो तो आपका ऑडिट का पार्ट है, यू हैव टू ऑब्जर्व योर जजमेंट, यू हैव टू डू ऑडिट अकॉर्डिंगली। लेकिन जो फ्रॉड है वो सर फ्रॉड उसके अंदर एक्सपोजर ड्राफ्ट जो आईसीएआई का आया है उसके अंदर क्लियरली दे आर सेइंग कि ओनली नॉलेजेबल एक्नॉलेज्ड फ्रॉड्स जो हैं वही उसको कमेंट करना ऑडिटर को। मींस जो फ्रॉड विच आर इन द नॉलेज ऑफ कंपनी बाय द कंपनी और ऑन द कंपनी वट एवर इट इज, बट जो भी इधर जो कंपनी की नॉलेज में होना चाहिए। ऐसा नहीं है कि उसकी फ्रॉड उसकी नॉलेज में आया। मैंने पहले भी यही बोला था कि फ्रॉड आपकी नॉलेज में आता है एज एन ऑडिटर, यू हैव टू डिस्कस विद दैट विद द मैनेजमेंट विद द कंपनी। ऐसा नहीं है कि आपकी नॉलेज में आया और आपने सीधा उसको रिपोर्ट में दे दिया या सीधा उसको सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट को रिपोर्ट कर दिया। अकॉर्डिंगली उसमें ये भी है कि बोर्ड को भी उसको कंसिडर करना है। यदि कोई मटेरियलिटी कंसेप्ट के बेस पे बोर्ड पे भी जाएगा, बोर्ड की क्या ऑब्जर्वेशन है, देन फाइनली उसका क्रक्स जो है असेस करके मटेरियलिटी को देखते हुए देन यू हैव टू गो फॉर दैट। तो फ्रॉड और मिसरिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स दोनों अलग अलग चीजें होगी सर। तो फ्रॉड को तो उसको एक्नॉलेज फ्रॉड्स को ही सिर्फ उसे कमेंट करना है।
Right.
जो मैनेजमेंट के थ्रू आया है.
Very true, very true. This word acknowledged is very, very critical because
Correct.
when the audit, three terms, every auditor needs to be crystally clear in his mind: mistake,
Correct.
and error, and fraud. Because three are interrelated and one should be very crystally clear. And I fully agree, it is only the acknowledged one. It's not that you have come to know something from hearsay and you start reporting to the central government. It's not like that. You have to communicate with the management, make them acknowledge. Either it will be categorized as a mistake, they will take the remedial action where disclosure requirement will be there. But if not, and if they acknowledge, then only your next step is there. I agree with that.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. Agreed, sir. Next question, please.
Sir, next question Ravi ji ka hai. Sir, company is not paying to past creditors for very long and making heavy investments in FA by taking loans and using cash from company profits. Is it negative impact and that should be reported anywhere?
सर इसमें इसीलिए इन्होंने सेक्शन क्लॉज 9 के अंदर स्पेसिफिकली दे हैव ब्रॉट इन वन क्लॉज द लोन्स एक्सेट्रा टेकन एंड यूज्ड बाय द रिलेटेड पार्टीज. ये स्पेसिफिकली एज एन ऑडिटर आपको कारों में रिपोर्ट करना है कि और आपने लोन वगैरह यदि वो क्रेडिटर्स को नहीं पे कर रहे हैं तो जो आपके बोरोइंग्स हैं वो कहीं और यूज हो रहे हैं, इन्वेस्टमेंट में यूज हो रहे हैं, वो आपको रिपोर्ट करना है कि वो आपने कंपनी में ना यूज करके उस सब्सिडीज में यूज किए हैं, वहां आपने अपने जॉइंट वेंचर्स में यूज किए हैं, वहां आ जाएगा वो क्लॉज, आपको रिपोर्ट करना आ जाएगा, वहां रिपोर्टिंग आ जाएगी इसकी.
Sir,
नेक्स्ट
next
क्वेश्चन.
query CA Pankaj Kumar ji ki hai. Any GST related issues also need to be reported under any clause?
नहीं नहीं, जीएसटी रिलेटेड इश्यूज नहीं है सर, वो इश्यूज नहीं है. ओनली थिंग कि जीएसटी आपका डिस्प्यूटेड था और आपने डिस्प्यूटेड जीएसटी इशू था और आपने उसको पे नहीं किया है तो उसकी यस डिटेल उसमें आ जाएगी. और उससे पहले वाली क्लॉज में यह है कि जीएसटी आपका अनपेड है बट अनडिस्प्यूटेड है और अनपेड है और उसकी अमाउंट आ जाएगी. ये दोनों चीजें आपको डिटेल देनी है. यस, ये डिस्प्यूटेड केस में आपको डिटेल भी देनी है कि जीएसटी किस लिए से डिस्प्यूटेड है. करेक्ट.
Sir, next query is Sunil Kumar ji ki hai. If the land deeds are given to bank as mortgage and not in possession of company, then whether auditor have to report the same?
ये बड़ा अच्छा क्वेश्चन आपने पुट इन किया है. अब इसमें होगा क्या, नॉर्मली दिस इज द नॉर्मल प्रोसीजर यू विल फाइंड इन 9 आउट ऑफ 10 कंपनीज. ये आपको सिचुएशन यू विल फेस दैट. अब इसमें क्या है, ओरिजिनल डॉक्यूमेंट्स आर लाइंग विद द बैंक एज एन मॉर्टगेज और उसने आपको सिर्फ फोटोकॉपीज दिखा दी कि ये फोटोकॉपीज हैं और मेरे पोजेशन में ये फोटोकॉपीज है और इसके बेस पे मैंने ये मेरी बुक्स के अंदर इसमें मैंने अकाउंटिंग की हुई है इसकी. अब यहाँ प्रॉब्लम आएगी कि आपको whether the photocopies are correct or not. अब इसमें आपको अपनी जजमेंट भी यूज करनी है एंड यू मे गो टू द बैंक एंड गेट दैट सर्टिफाइड आल्सो. यू कैन से कि जी ये मेरे को इसकी सर्टिफाइड कॉपी मंगवा दो बैंक से और फिर मैं देन आई रिलाई अपॉन दैट.
पूरा सत्यम ही फोटोकॉपी के ऊपर था.
वो एफडीआई वगैरह का था. एज वेल एज यू कैन टेक लीगल रिपोर्ट आल्सो. किसी लॉयर से आप उसकी भी टाइटल डीड्स के ऊपर आप उसकी भी रिपोर्ट ले सकते हैं.
Sir, next query have fixed assets verification has to be done on reasonable intervals. What should be ideal intervals for physical verification of land PPE which are non-movable?
इसके ऊपर सर वो ऑलरेडी इंस्टीट्यूट की गाइडलाइंस है, बहुत शुरू से ही है, जब से ये माइक्रो आया था. दे हैव सेड नॉर्मल पीरियड शुड बी 2 years. आफ्टर एवरी इंटरवल ऑफ एवरी 2 years the physical assets have to be verified by the management of the company.
See, according to me, it can go up to even 5 years. So, what is the question? It depends upon the size of the company. It can be once in 3 years, once in 5 years, but it should be reasonable, having regard to the size of the company.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, वो तो वहाँ यूज करता ही है. साइज, नेचर ऑफ द बिजनेस ऑफ द कंपनी हैज टू बी कंसिडर्ड अकॉर्डिंगली. बिल्कुल करेक्ट सर.
Sir, next query Rakesh Goyal ji ki hai. Whether it is necessary to provide interest on its unsecured loan taken from director or his relatives. If till last year they provide, if they think for current year not provide, is there any legal hassle?
Normally, yes. This has to be taken loan this has to be taken interest from the loans given to your directors, etc. Because सेक्शन 185 186 में भी ये चीज आती है कि डॉक्यूमेंटेशन इज प्रॉपर और नॉट, एंड आर्म लेंथ का उसका प्रूव नहीं होगा. यू हैव टू प्रूव दैट द लोन्स हैव बीन गिवन at the proper adequate terms and conditions and at our arm length प्रूव करने के लिए एटलीस्ट आपको बैंक रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट लेना ही पड़ेगा, लेना ही चाहिए. उसके ऊपर और फॉर्मेलिटीज होनी चाहिए, टीडीएस एक्सेट्रा की सभी चीजों की फॉर्मेलिटीज यू हैव टू कंप्लाई विद.
सर नेक्स्ट क्वेरी रवि जी की है, इफ कंपनी हैज मेड पेमेंट फॉर परचेज ऑफ कंपनी along with property but the property has been named in director's name and also all shareholding in the name of directors only.
हमारे पास ना क्वेरी चेंज नहीं हो रही है, क्वेरी वो अटक गई है, ये सुनील कुमार अग्रवाल वाली आगे क्वेरी हमारे को दिखाई नहीं दे रही है.
कौन सी क्वेरी ले रहे हैं दिवाकर जी?
सर रवि मनोचा जी की क्वेरी है सर.
ये चेंज नहीं हो रही है, इसके आगे फ्लो नहीं कर रहा है. आगे
यस, अब बढ़े इसको दोबारा प्लीज.
If company has made payment for purchase of a company along with the property, but the property has been in the name of directors and also all shareholding in the name of directors only, what reporting to be done?
सेम वही रिपोर्टिंग होगी कि टाइटल डीड्स आर नॉट इन द नेम ऑफ द कंपनी, वही वाली रिपोर्टिंग है. किसी ने क्वेरी भी पूछा था कि ये कैसे पॉसिबल है, देन आई एक्सप्लेन कि ये नॉर्मली ये हो जाता है, ऐसा केस होता है. तो टाइटल डीड्स आर इन द नेम ऑफ द डायरेक्टर, वो एक उसमें अब उन्होंने स्पेसिफाइड टेबल दे दी है. उन्होंने पूछा है कि ये किसके नाम पे है, प्रॉपर्टी कंपनी के नाम पे नहीं है, तो टाइटल डीड्स किसके नाम से है और कितने टाइम से है उसके नाम पे, और रीजंस क्या हैं उसके, क्या आपने अभी तक इसको कंपनी के नाम पे नहीं लिया. यू हैव टू गिव द रीजंस आल्सो फॉर द डिफॉल्ट.
तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं, फॉर्मेट दिया हुआ है उस
हाँ.
आपको किसके नाम में उसमें कोई बात नहीं, आपको फॉर्मेट दे, उस फॉर्मेट में इंफॉर्मेशन भरनी है.
बस
उस फॉर्मेट के अंदर में डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी आ जाएगा, ग्रॉस कैरिंग वैल्यू आएगी, हेल्ड इन द नेम ऑफ वेदर प्रमोटर, डायरेक्टर और देयर रिलेटिव और एम्प्लॉय, पीरियड किसके लिए है, इंडिकेट द रेंज वेयर एप्रोप्रिएट, रीजंस फॉर नॉट बीइंग हेल्ड इन द नेम ऑफ द कंपनी. आपको रीजन बताना पड़ेगा, जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट बात है. एक चार्ट फॉर्मेट बना के आपको उसके सामने लिखना पड़ेगा.
देखो, एक बहुत सिंपल सा कंसेप्ट है, ये तो आप समझ लीजिए कि आप ऑडिट कर रहे हैं, योर पर्पस इज डिस्क्लोजर एंड रिपोर्टिंग. कोई भी चीज आप डिफर करते हैं मैनेजमेंट से किसी भी चीज में, योर जॉब इज अप टू द रिपोर्टिंग, दैट्स ऑल. उसमें ये नहीं है कि आपने उसको असेस करके कोई पेनल्टी लगानी है, कुछ उसके ऊपर मारधाड़ करनी है, कुछ नहीं करना. योर पर्पस इज टू रिपोर्ट, दैट्स ऑल. अ रिपोर्ट शुड बी क्लियर, एडिक्वेट एंड कंप्रिहेंसिव. ऐसा ना हो कि आपसे कोई चीज छूट जाए, ये चीज है, दैट्स ऑल. ये बिल्कुल क्लियर समझ लीजिए.
सर नेक्स्ट क्वेरी विकास गुप्ता जी की है, वेदर कॉस्ट रिकॉर्ड्स एप्लीकेबल टू प्राइवेट कंपनी और एनी लिमिट्स मेंशन्ड.
देखिए, इसमें आई डोंट थिंक इसमें लिमिट्स तो कोई मेंशन नहीं है. द ओनली थिंग इज कि प्राइवेट लिमिटेड पे भी एप्लीकेबल होती है यदि वो स्पेसिफाइड इंडस्ट्री पे है. इफ द कंपनी इज फॉलोइंग इन द स्पेसिफाइड इंडस्ट्री, क्या हैवी केमिकल्स वगैरह हैं, ऑटो इंडस्ट्री है, आपका बड़ी कंपनी, हैवी कंपनी, सभी पे ऑलमोस्ट अब ऑर्डर इशू हो चुका है. तो ये प्राइवेट लिमिटेड और पब्लिक कंपनी से उसका कोई इम्पैक्ट नहीं है. इफ एप्लीकेबल देन एप्लीकेबल ऑन ऑल.
सर नेक्स्ट क्वेरी अंतिमा जी की है, प्राइवेट कंपनीज ऑन विच कारो इज एप्लीकेबल, आरबीआई रिपोर्टिंग एप्लीकेबल.
यस, होगा, क्यों नहीं होगा. जो प्राइवेट कंपनी जो इसके अंदर एम्बिट में फॉल कर रही हैं कारो 2020 के, एंड उन पे आरबीआई की जहां कहीं पर रिपोर्टिंग है, वो होनी पड़ेगी. नथिंग इज, यू कैन नॉट, जहां कारो एप्लीकेबल हो गया तो यू हैव टू कंप्लाई विद ऑल द 21 क्लॉजेस, दैट्स ऑल. सिंपल है.
सर नेक्स्ट क्वेरी सीए पंकज कुमार जी की है, सपोज इन सीएफएस if it has any qualification on any one of the clauses of CARO, then whether the auditor comment on each and every clause of CARO or only specific one which the auditor observed.
Suppose in CFS it is any qualification one of the clauses of नहीं CFS में कोई qualification on its own तो होगी नहीं ना. CARO एप्लीकेबल नहीं है CFS पे. आपको CFS की ऑडिट रिपोर्ट, CFS की जो फाइनल एक ऑडिट रिपोर्ट बनाएंगे उसके अंदर कारो के ऊपर कोई कमेंट नहीं देना है आपको. आपको सिंपली अभी कपूर साहब ने बहुत क्लियरली बताया था कि किसी कंपनी पे एप्लीकेबल है जो आप CFS में ले रहे हैं, और उसका आपको सिर्फ एक टेबल बनानी है कि फलां फलां क्लॉज नंबर फलां कंपनी का एप्लीकेबल है, वहां जाके चेक कर लीजिए, दैट्स ऑल। और ज्यादा से ज्यादा वो क्लॉज एज इट इज वर्बटिम यहाँ पर दे दीजिए, दैट्स ऑल, और इससे ज्यादा कुछ नहीं है आपको।
सर नेक्स्ट क्वेरी राकेश गोयल जी की है, प्लीज प्रोवाइड रेमेडियल स्टेप टू रिफ्यूजल फॉर साइनिंग द प्रोजेक्शंस as many case pressurized by bank by giving explanation that it is the guidelines of the bank.
देखो ये कारो से रिलेटेड नहीं है, बट स्टिल वी कैन गिव यू द आंसर फॉर दिस कि अब आज की डेट में ऑलरेडी बहुत सारे इसके ऊपर डिसीजंस आ चुके हैं कि आपको प्रोजेक्शंस साइन नहीं करनी है। यदि प्रोजेक्शन साइन करनी है तो उसके लिए एक अलग से क्या आया हुआ है, अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड तो नहीं, व्हाट वी कॉल दैट, स्टैंडर्ड्स कुछ आए हुए हैं, यू हैव टू फॉलो दैट, अकॉर्डिंगली यू कैन साइन, अदरवाइज नो। प्रोजेक्शंस नॉर्मली आपको कोई साइन नहीं करनी है, और आपको कोई बैंकर भी आपको प्रेशराइज नहीं कर सकता है साइन करने के लिए। एक कोई इंस्टीट्यूट का गाइडलाइंस तो आई हुई है प्रोजेक्शंस के ऊपर कैसे आपको बनानी है और कैसे उसको आपको सर्टिफाई करना है।
फॉर्मेट ऑफ रिपोर्ट भी दिया होगा, वो फॉर्मेट ऑफ रिपोर्ट भी दिया होगा।
हाँ, उसका कारो से कोई रिलेशन नहीं है, लेकिन कारो में आपको कोई प्रोजेक्शन साइन नहीं करनी है, कोई आपको प्रोजेक्शन को अकाउंट फॉर नहीं करना है। यहाँ पर प्रोजेक्शन यस, आपको क्लॉज 19 में यू हैव टू असेस द प्रोजेक्शंस, यू हैव टू सी द प्रोजेक्शंस एंड देन यू हैव टू असेस कि हाँ कंपनी की मटेरियल अनसर्टेनिटी नहीं है, कंपनी की मटेरियल वायबिलिटी है फॉर मीटिंग इट्स फ्यूचर लायबिलिटीज फॉर नेक्स्ट 1 ईयर, दैट्स ऑल।
सर नेक्स्ट क्वेरी बसंत कुमार मेहता जी की है, व्हाट वाज द रैशनल ऑफ मेनी चेंजेस इन कारो 2020?
कपूर साहब बताएंगे, कपूर वाज इंस्ट्रूमेंटल टू दैट।
नहीं, वे कपूर तो बेचारे आजकल कपूरों का तो जो है ना टाइम ठीक नहीं चल रहा है। क्योंकि एक आपको मैं जोक सुनाता हूँ, इट विल गो ऑन यूट्यूब आल्सो, डोंट वरी। उसने कभी कपूर के जलाने से कोरोना वायरस चला जाएगा क्या?
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल सर।
उसने कहा कपूर के जलाने से क्या कोरोना वायरस चला जाएगा? तो वो सर जी बोलते हैं कपूर जब यस बैंक खा गया तो कोरोना क्या चीज है?
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah.
तो अभी वो जो कृतिका कपूर भी फंस गई थी बेचारी। चलो एनीवे, तो देखिए ऐसा है कि मेरा ये मानना है कि ये जितनी क्लॉजेज आ रही हैं, all these things have been noticed in all the recent scams कहिए, fraud कहिए, scandal कहिए, और some very wrong things going on in the corporate sector। ये सब वहीं से आ रही हैं। हमारा जो कहना है, मेरी जो लड़ाई है, मेरा ये कहना है कि why the auditors only, why the auditors only। अब देखिए वैल्यूएशन के अंदर मिनिमम का रजिस्टर्ड वैल्यूअर करेगा, आप वैल्यूएशन मेथड और किसी से नहीं करवाएंगे, ये पहले नहीं था अब आया। तो अब अच्छा ऑडिटर्स को अच्छी भली किसी कंपनी के अंदर ऑफ बैलेंस शीट आइटम समझ में नहीं आती थी, तो बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, बहुत सारे इश्यूज हैं, तो ये सब फ्रॉड्स हो रहे हैं। लेकिन मेरा ये मानना है कि ऑडिटर के अलावा कंपनी को बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर चलाता है, ऑडिट कमेटी चलाती है, उसके बाद वहां पे सीएफओ होता है, उसके बाद में इंटरनल ऑडिटर होता है। इन सबको तो आप भूल गए। आपने ऑडिटर को बोला ऑडिटर सब करके दे देगा ये, तो ऑडिटर को अब मेरा ये मानना है कि कोई somebody should work it out। पहली बात तो देखिए मेरे को ऑडिटर की इस ड्यूटी से भी उतना डर नहीं लग रहा। अभी आशीष जी मुझे सच्ची पूछिए, डर लग रहा है। मेरे से कई लोग मुझे अजीब सवाल पूछते हैं, मुझे डर लग रहा है कि ऑडिटर ऑडिट कैसे करेगा विदाउट हैविंग एडिक्वेट टेक्नोलॉजी। आज की डेट में देखिए, मतलब कि एक अगले 2 साल 3 साल की सोचिए, विदाउट टेक्नोलॉजी ऑडिटर ऑडिट ही नहीं कर पाएगा। सो दैट इज वन सेपरेट इशू। सो मेरा ख्याल है ये सब फ्रॉड हुए हैं, तो लेकिन समवेयर दिस ऑडिट कमेटी इंटरनल ऑडिटर्स आर मिसिंग, बट दीज थिंग्स आर एक्चुअली फाउंड इन मैनी कॉर्पोरेट स्कैम्स एंड फ्रॉड्स। एक शायद मैंने राजी के पास एक लेक्चर लिया था ऑडिट क्वालिटी पे जुलाई में, उसमें मैंने कुछ इस तरह की बातें जुलाई के अंदर कही थी कि ये सब परफॉर्मेंस इश्यूज हैं। सो देयर इज अ परफॉर्मेंस गैप आल्सो ऑन द पार्ट ऑफ ऑडिटर्स। ऐसा नहीं है कि हमने पिछले एक लेक्चर में हमने ये कहा था कि एक्सपेक्टेशन गैप क्या है। एक तो एक्सपेक्टेशन गैप हम कहते हैं जो ऑडिटर करता है और जो पब्लिक समझती है, दोनों को पब्लिक को समझिए नहीं कि ऑडिटर क्या कर सकता है नहीं कर सकता है। दूसरा ऑडिटर को क्या करना चाहिए और ऑडिटर क्या करता है, दोनों के बीच में परफॉर्मेंस गैप है। एक गैप आ गया कि अब सोसाइटी तो सोचे कि ऑडिटर सब कुछ ढूंढ ढांड के दे देगा, कोई फ्रॉड भी नहीं है, कुछ भी नहीं है, सब कुछ ठीक ठाक है। वो एक अपने आप में एवोल्यूशनरी गैप है। सो ऑल दीज थिंग्स आर हैपनिंग वन बाय वन, so we are sure that it will be taken care of in the process.
So thank you, sir. Thank you very much for making this our today's webinar a very interactive webinar. We have all our three personalities, big personalities with us. So I thank you all for giving this nice presentation to our members. So thank you, Gupta ji, thank you, Kapoor Saab, and thank you, Rakesh Singh ji. Thank you all, sir.
Thank you.
It was our
थैंक यू
pleasure.
ऑल,
Thank you.
थैंक यू ऑल। मैं एक
Thank
छोटा सा आउट ऑफ द सिलेबस एक लोगों को एक जनरल पॉइंट बताना चाहूंगा। अभी क्या हो रहा है, हम लोग कोविड में फंसे हुए हैं और क्या हो रहा है कि आपके पास सभी के पास डेबिट और क्रेडिट कार्ड होते हैं। हमारे पास सभी के पास है, हमारे फैमिली मेंबर्स के पास नाम से होते हैं, हमारे नाम से होते हैं, और हमें पता ही नहीं है उनकी लिमिट्स क्या क्या है। सभी की इंटरनेशनल लिमिट्स खुली हुई हैं और आज की डेट में हो क्या रहा है, हम यहाँ बैठे हैं और इंटरनेशनल लिमिट्स में फ्रॉड हुए चले जा रहे हैं। मेरे 4-5 दोस्तों के साथ ऐसा कुछ हो गया है पिछले 10-12 दिन के अंदर। तो आप लोग सभी से मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि गो थ्रू ऑल द कार्ड, जो आपके कभी यूज नहीं होते हैं उनको भी निकालिए। गो टू द नेट बैंकिंग साइट ऑफ द बैंक और हेल्पलाइन कॉल सेंटर ऑफ द बैंक, और उनसे पूछें कि उनकी लिमिट्स क्या क्या हैं, और एटलीस्ट इंटरनेशनल बैंकिंग लिमिट्स जो हैं उनको जीरो कर दीजिए, नील कर लीजिए। और दूसरी जो करंट डोमेस्टिक लिमिट्स हैं उनको भी आप रिड्यूस कर सकते हैं, और विद इन मैक्सिमम परमिजिबल लिमिट्स थ्रू नेट बैंकिंग करते हैं तो उसको आप घटा बटा अपने आप कर सकते हैं। यू कैन इंक्रीज एंड यू कैन रिड्यूस ऑन योर एंड। तो मेरी रिक्वेस्ट ये है कि आप सभी उसको रिव्यू कीजिए और उनको कम कर लीजिए अपनी अकॉर्डिंगली रिक्वायरमेंट के हिसाब से। आज की डेट में बड़ी प्रॉब्लम आ रही है। इंटरनेशनल के केस में क्या होता है कि वहाँ ट्रांजेक्शन हो रही हैं ड्यूरिंग द, आपके यहाँ नाइट होती है, वहाँ ट्रांजेक्शन हो रही है और उसमें ओटीपी भी नहीं आता है, और रात रात में पता लगा आपकी सारी क्रेडिट लिमिट खत्म हो गई, आपका कार्ड खत्म हो गया। देयर इज बैंक डू से कि जी आप हमें रिपोर्ट करो और हम आपको ये करेंगे वो करेंगे। वो एक अनदर हैजल है, उसमें आपको कल को रिफंड आता है नहीं आता, वो एक अनदर प्रॉब्लम है। दे से कि 48 आवर्स में आप हमें रिपोर्ट कर दीजिए। बट विद दिस फोरम, एट दिस फोरम आई रिक्वेस्ट ऑल के प्लीज टेक इट सीरियसली एंड रिव्यू योर limits of your debit credit cards.
Thank you, sir.
So
Thank
thank
you
you
very
all.
much for your
Stay
advice.
healthy, stay
Very good
safe.
advice.
Thank
Very
you.
good
Thank,
advice.
thank you.
Thank you.